All right, y'all. Back at y'all with this podcast, man. This is gonna be a very interesting episode. We're here with a brother who I was always impressed with. Whenever I was in his presence. I've met the brother probably 20 years ago in Tallahassee, and we have a very similar circle of friends uh, in certain geographic areas. And it's a brother that I've always kept in touch with, and I hold in high regard for his thinking ability and his articulation on many different matters. He's one of those rare people that when I'm around, I just kind of listen. I'm asked to speak a lot around people, and it's very refreshing when you're around people where you can just have a listening posture because the person has a lot of interesting perspectives and a lot of good information, deeply studied, and great philosopher of life. So this brother had very interesting experience. The conversation will be about that experience, but it's just two brothers talking and even kind of catching up with each other. So uh, this might be a very eclectic conversation. Who knows where it goes? But there are no rules. So I just want to introduce y'all to my good brother David Williamson. David, you can go ahead and introduce yourself however you want, and then we can get into the thick of it, man.
Nah, hey, hello everyone. I'm just happy to be here, happy to be talking to the brother. Hey, Rue, like you said, we've known each other for 20 years and I've always been impressed with him. Um, Amazing that I've met him in the capacity of a poet, and he just stood sh- head and shoulders above all the other poets that I had been hearing, and the messages, the energy, all of it. I was always impressed, and his wisdom, his temperance. He's always been a calm, flat nervous system. Not easily triggered, and that was always something I respected him. Even when we were young, he seemed to be to me the same way. You're not going to trigger him, and that means that you're not going to get him talking stupid. If he's not triggered, he's not going to be talking stupid. And that's something that I can say. I've never heard him saying a bunch of stupid shit because he's never been triggered around me to the point where you can get him to, get him out of it off the square. So much respect to the brother, and I really appreciate him for having me on.
Yeah, man. So let's get into the main issue, the main topic. You had something quite phenomenal happen in your life that really is kind of the root and the crux of two of the uh, most pertinent philosophical questions that human beings can have. Probably maybe three. There's three main questions that human beings have. Where did I come from in terms of my spirit? Where did it come from? What is my purpose? And number three, what happens after we die? Right?
Yeah,
These are the three questions that philosophical books have been written about and philosophers have pondered about. Certain degrees of scientists ponder about and try to investigate to whatever tools we have, limited tools that we may have. Very few of us get to experience um, the closest way to answer at least number three, what happens to us after we die. And
yeah,
those people who have had those experiences, they share those experiences, and a lot of times it very much mimics psychedelic experiences. And there's a lot to unpack with that. And so I just want you to just tell your story, and then we can get into your background. We can get into, epiphanies that you had. I mean, you always a brother who have very interesting perspectives about spirituality. So the fact that you did have this experience, I think that it probably informed your level of information, which was already at a very high level. And I want to investigate that. I want to interrogate, what you thought about what happens after you die and the meaning of life before, and how you felt afterwards, man, because I know you gave all of that a lot of thought in your sojourns into spiritual systems, because that was some of the main conversations we've had in terms of
yeah,
different African spiritual systems and how you studied like Yoruba and different things and Haitian voodoo and what have you.
yeah.
So let's get into it, man. Just say a little bit about yourself, man. Your age, where you're from, all that, and then let's talk about what happened to you.
All right. Again, I'm David Williamson. I'm 47. Um, be 48, I guess, in July 31st. Um, I am from a small town in North Carolina called Yanceyville, and live in Atlanta now. I've been living here a little over 20 years. And what happened? Well, I guess growing up in that town in Yanceyville, like 4,000 people. Very racist town, a lot of racial tension. Um, I saw the KKK marching up and down Main Street multiple times as a child, and it kind of just put in me a just hate. The stories I heard about in my house, even my from my grandmother, from my mother, it was just a lot of stuff that fueled a hate that I had for all white people, that became like consuming for me. Um, to the point where I didn't I didn't really even want to participate in this system because I felt that my participation would contribute to my own oppression and oppression of people who look like me. So I kind of just I was smart, so going through college was easy. Getting degrees was easy. I had almost a photographic memory, so education, any of this stuff, none of this stuff was complicated for me. Ended up getting a master's degree at Georgia Tech from in management and technology, and none of this stuff was hard. I could have kept continued through school and gotten PhDs. It wouldn't have been difficult because no information that has ever been put in front of me has ever been confounding. Um, I've always had these gifts, but I just never had any desire or passion to do or be anything in this system, in this world, even because this was my reality. And and I just hated it. I hated being here. I hated this life. But up until I would say 5 years old, 5, 6 years old, I was a country boy and I enjoyed playing in the woods. My life was kind of idyllic. It was Huckleberry Finn, just out in the woods playing and fishing and climbing trees. We had these vines in the woods when I was a child that connected from the canopy all the way down to the forest, floor, and formed a bunch of like a jungle gym, like swings, everything. We played on those all day. We didn't go to the park. We went to the forest and played in the forest. And so my childhood was beautiful. I went to a summer camp and I drowned. And and I think that put me on a course of being kind of stuck in a certain state to where the anger and the isolation and all that stuff just became who I was. But when I drowned at this summer camp, I remember seeing the kids swimming. Everybody had on life jackets, so I was like, my assumption I couldn't swim. So my assumption was none of them can swim. They got all that confidence because they got on life jackets. So I put a life jacket on and I just ran and jumped off the pier into the water. And as soon as I hit the water, I came out the life jacket. The life jacket stayed at the top of the water, and I went straight down. And as I'm going down, you know, I'm, you know, I'm, I'm confused. I don't know how to swim. I don't know what to do really. So I'm going down, and then I lose my breath. I remember thinking, okay, I'm not gonna be able to hold my breath for much longer. And then I'm in blackness, and this voice says to me very clearly, and to be honest, it sounds like my voice now. When I think back as a child, this experience, it sounds like my voice. It said, if you can touch the bottom, you can just push yourself back up. And I responded to the voice. I said, it doesn't seem like I'm going to touch the bottom. I'm just going down. And as soon as I said that, I started floating back up. And as I'm floating up, my attention goes up, and I can see light coming in from the top of the water because at first everything was just black. And then I see a splash, and I see these ripples rippling the uh, from the center of the splash. And that was beautiful because the light is shining through the top, and I'm seeing these rings that are just growing, and I'm staring intensely at these rings. And then I slowly reach my hand up, and I hit the pole that they put in the water to pull me out. And they pulled me out. My brother was there, because of most of my life, I never internalized that as a traumatic experience. It was just something that I happened, and I damn near didn't, looked at it almost like, did it happen? I didn't even really, But last year, I asked my brother, was he there when I drowned, in that camp? And he said, yeah, I was right there on the dock and on the pier. And he said, and I asked him, I said, well, when I came out, what did I do? He said, you coughed, and then you just sat there. And he said, and there was no, I asked him, did they have to pump my chest or anything? He said, nah. He said, and I remember coming out of the water, sitting on the edge and just sighing. I remember coughing and sighing, just like taking a deep breath. And then when I looked around, everybody was in a panic. Like people were crying, people were falling apart, like they thought I was dead. And so I asked my brother, I said, well, how long was I under the water? And he said, no less than 3 or 4 minutes. And I know that was a problem for me because I used to hold my breath in the bathtub to see how long I could do it. And it was never more than a minute and a half, 2 minutes. So I know that 3 or 4 minutes was too long for me to be under the water. So as an adult, I started putting this together and realized, damn, I had a near death experience at age 6. And, and my life changed after that. And as when I started remembering back to some of the things that was happening to me, my mother, we went to Germany with my father. He was in the military. And when I got there, it was shortly after the drowning. So when I got there, I was having these visions of the future, and it was bad. It was a lot of I called it the 6 year old language I used was human roadkill. It was like when you're in the car, there's just death. It's just human bodies on both sides of the road, and nobody cares. People they're listening to the music, they're talking about what's going on in life and singing songs, whatever. And there's dead bodies on both sides of the road. Like this is what I was seeing at age 6. And I felt like this was a timeline. I didn't know at the time that timelines. I didn't even have a language for timelines, but that was a timeline. That was the timeline that I saw for all of humanity, at least in this country. And it made me angry. It made me disinterested in trying to even participate in this life. It made me sad. It made me hopeless. And so from that point forward, and I was also having what felt like really like memories of being in Hiroshima and Nagasaki during the nuclear Holocaust. And those memories, my mom I would come home from school and it would be like, I would just go there. I would go there. I was at 6 years old. I was coming home from school and I would ball up in the corner in my bedroom and just crying and shaking and screaming, I don't want to die. I don't want to die. I don't want to die because in my mind, I was in these explosions in Hiroshima and Nagasaki. And and I started researching this when I was a kid, and trying to understand like why was this in me. As a teenager, I started researching about uranium and thorium as a alternative to uranium, and I wanted to understand why we didn't use thorium instead of uranium, and came to a lot of conclusions that it was just political. Uranium is mostly in countries that doesn't have strong infrastructures
Mhm.
and they could just go take it. Whereas thorium was in a lot of European countries, it would have been overpriced and they would have made the whole nuclear game, very expensive and costly. That was my young mind. I didn't really understand it all, but I just knew that thorium was a better alternative, or it seemed to be a better alternative in my mind at that time. But to even be thinking about that, and the only reason I was thinking about that was because of my memories of being in Hiroshima, and I never really wanted that to happen again. But I always had anxiety that it would. And
So, so these memories of being in Hiroshima, they started when you were what? This was after the
after I drowned,
drowning? Yeah. So
yeah,
how soon after it?
maybe months, and maybe not even months. It was a summer camp, and then we went to Germany shortly out. It was still warm in Germany, so it may have been very shortly after the experience.
And if these memories would come up, they'd come in the form of dreams while you were sleeping.
Now it could be in the middle of the day. I could just go into this triggered state and I would be seeing
Mhm.
explosions and buildings falling and people screaming and this young girl running towards me. And it just felt like I was there.
Okay,
Yeah.
so had you studied or heard about Hiroshima and Nagasaki before that? Because you were six
Now
years old.
I was 6. Um, a memory that I might have made up. because this Nagasaki stuff was so and Hiroshima stuff was so ingrained in my mind.
Hmm.
I used to say because I did read the encyclopedias a lot, so I explained to myself before I remembered that I had this experience that maybe I read about Hiroshima and Nagasaki in those encyclopedias,
Okay. And
But
are you
yeah,
confident it was actually Hiroshima and Nagasaki? It was Japanese people.
yeah, it was the memory seemed to be very clear to me
Mm,
that like it was Japan.
okay.
Whether it was Hiroshima or Nagasaki, that's what
You
I'm not.
didn't know.
I don't
Okay.
know.
So what I'm
But it
what I'm trying to get at is that you're saying that when you had the near death experience with the drowning, you started seeing these images of, or after, soon thereafter, you started seeing images of dead people on the road, right? So
that was a timeline that I seemed to feel like what we were headed towards. That would be
okay,
dreams.
so that's forward looking.
Yeah,
It was forward looking.
yeah.
So the Hiroshima and Nagasaki visions we have, do you know if that was forward looking or backwards looking? And how do you
If
tell the difference in terms of how you
I
talk?
couldn't tell the difference as a child, I didn't know. I was very smart, so I think I remembered hearing about Hiroshima and Nagasaki. But so I think when I saw those explosions and I saw
Mm.
Japanese people, I made that connection.
Right.
But there really is no way for me to know whether it was the future or the past, other than just sometimes you just have this knowing. You know what I'm
Right.
saying? And I
Right.
think that that's what I felt then, and that's kind of what I've maintained is that I knew that it was there.
Right.
But it's there's no way for me to know in actuality.
But you just had some type of sentient feeling that the first visions you had was of the future, but then the ones that you had that you identify as Hiroshima and Nagasaki were the past.
Yeah,
Okay. 'Cause I'm trying to
yeah.
parse that out. I don't know if this man is seeing in the future or the man is seeing in
Yeah.
this
No,
young
I was
person
seeing
in
in
the
the
past.
future was the human roadkill. That's
Right.
where I knew in my mind at that age that we were headed towards that.
Okay.
And so it gave me this I was already kind of headed towards just racial stuff, just hating white people and hating this system, hating and all of it. And then I'm like, well, it's doomed anyway because these people are so horrible, you know. So we is no reason for me to even pour into this. So I'll just remain on the outskirts, talk shit, don't do anything because I didn't really feel like there was anything that could be done about where this was headed because I already saw this timeline.
Got it. Got it. Like, well, what's the point if people are going to
That
finally
hopelessness is what made me sick.
got it. Got it. So
Yeah,
this is from 6 years old.
yeah,
So now, let's go through the timeline. So you're six, and then you got this feeling inside you that the world is doomed anyway, right? So,
yeah,
I mean, it's easy now to become what they call nihilistic, right? Because
yes,
like death is waiting for everyone. We all know death is waiting for us individually, but when you have a firm belief that death is waiting for the world, right?
yeah,
It
yeah,
certainly would change your motivation to do anything that would have any implications for the future or future progeny or a better world for anybody because it's inevitable that everything's going to come crashing down, right?
yeah.
Okay, so that must have then put you in a state of depression.
Most of my life, like 35 years, pretty much depressed.
So
Yeah.
how are you managing this? Do you just kind of everything is just a band-aid, or you just having short-term happiness, or
Short-term happiness. Yeah, short-term, everything's a band-aid. That exactly, all of that. But still this intense attempt to be a pious, good person, even though I'm full of a bunch of toxic kind of emotions and orientations towards this life. So
okay? Well, I mean, you handled it very well because when I met you, I saw nothing but a good brother.
yeah,
I
I was
mean,
in
like,
love. I was in love when we met too.
okay, okay, love can do that to you, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, yeah, it can
yeah,
do that to you.
yeah.
So then talk to me. So you basically have a nihilistic approach to life. You're growing up in a place where you don't like the people that you're around because you see the KKK. You got to be under stress because you don't know what's going to happen next when you're around people who are intent on your demise, right? And then you're
Yeah,
living in a society that seems like KKK incorporated.
yeah,
Because once you see them around you locally, you are going to see them, you know, internationally,
yeah,
try to connect the dots, right?
yeah,
So how do you navigate? Are you becoming somebody who basically one doesn't want to participate in society, but are you also very vitriolic around the people that are around you?
yeah, yeah. I didn't really connect with white people after this NDE, and I kind of look at life differently. Well, I really look at life differently now. Some people, even from my childhood, white people from childhood who knew me, they say that I was just mean. I wasn't approachable. I wasn't, and when I explain to them, or when they see the video about my near death experience, they say, "Oh, I get it now." I was like, "Yeah, I wasn't really going to connect with anybody."
Right. You weren't going to connect with.
Everything that I saw as a child, that was my sweeping opinion of all white people. And then I read a lot of stuff about how Africa was, colonized and slavery and all of these things, and it just
Right. It becomes like
these people, they are this thing.
right, like
Yeah,
a wall effect where it just gets worse and worse when you start learning
yeah,
history. I mean, I think all of us, but I mean, I don't think you can be someone of African descent in this world and not go through that roller coaster,
yeah,
right? I
yeah,
think it's very difficult. I mean, imagine a Native American and you learn your history and what
yeah,
happened. It's hard to not go through that roller coaster of emotions. But then it comes to turn to find out that pretty much any group of people, when they learn a history, can go through that roller coaster because
yeah,
all of us have specific histories based on the ethnic groups that we belong to of defeat and triumph.
yeah,
All of us
yeah.
have those histories.
Yes,
Um,
yes,
Except for maybe you have Mongolian roots and you can just hang your hat on Genghis Khan because nothing really happened until after he died. So,
yeah,
other than that,
yeah,
there's been this game of winning and losing, and there's a huge price to pay for those who've lost, right?
yeah,
Um,
yeah,
a lot of pain, a lot of torture, a lot of bloodshed, a lot of ripped families, a lot of that. But then we get to find out that it's not specific to just us.
exactly, exactly.
So, how do you end up navigating that type of that type of understanding when you don't really realize that it's not just us, but a lot of people have these common stories. And then, the stories become even more complex when you go to places like Africa, where you have certain ethnic groups that don't get along with certain ethnic groups because of this history of conquering and raping and pillaging, right? Where the Ashantis started their empire, and to spread out their empire, there was a lot of killing and, human sacrifice and all of that. It happened with the Zulus and the Shaka Zulu and all of that. So everyone got these stories to tell, and we're just trying to navigate because part of the human experience is you do want justice,
Yeah,
right?
hmm,
You do want justice for what has been said and what has been done, and particularly if you feel like that history has been hidden away from you, right?
yeah,
Deep dive. I mean, I
yeah,
went through this journey myself, and that's probably why we met, right? Because we were in the same
yeah,
circle of men who went through that same type of conscious exploration, that conscious journey where most people around us don't know any basic history. They don't know,
yeah,
they're just kind of floating in this world,
yeah,
where they think everything's okay, and we're clear that everything isn't okay. Then you got this kind of like superpower experience of saying, you can see the past and you can see the future of destruction. And so I can imagine, that's a heavy burden to hold, man. Uh,
yeah.
so then as you grow up, I mean, what is your human relationships now with, okay, there's a certain group of people that you don't like, uh, because, it's KKK around you. You also identify them as the people who dropped the bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. So
Mm.
they have a bad credit history in terms of
Yeah.
white folks, right? But so what is your relationship now with black folks?
Um, and I mean, I'm
Not now. I mean, during
in
that
that in
time.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know, I've it was just love. I mean, I guess my mother loved me intensely and protected me intensely, and I saw it. It was I've seen her protect me to the point where uh she if this guy, I'll tell a story. We were in the laundromat and this is funny and intense, but we were pushing each other around on the carts and we shouldn't have been doing that, but we were kids. So I guess the guy who was attending the laundromat came out, older white guy, and instead of just saying, stop or anything like that, he grabbed my cousin and pulled her out of the cart by her arm and she was in the air, like had her dangling in the air, and it was hurting her arm. And my mother came over instantly, and there was a Coke bottle, empty Coke bottle on the washing machines, and the dryers were lined up against the wall behind that. She grabbed the Coke bottle all in one motion, grabbed the Coke bottle, smashed it on the washing machines,
Mm.
grabbed this man by his neck and collar area, slammed him against the wall, and put the broken piece of glass to his throat and said, "If you touch my children again, I will kill you." You know, and the man is, just shaking and erratic, and he says something that saved his life. And he said, "I'm sorry, I didn't know it was you." And
Mm.
my mama frowned up and she said, "You still don't know who the fuck I am, but if you touch my kids," because it confused her. She's like, "Wait, so you don't know it was me? Like, what do you even, who do you think I am?" He said, "You still don't know who the fuck I am, but if you touch my kids again, I'm gonna kill you." And he apologized and ran off. But seeing her protect us like that, like those are the things, those are the memories I have. Poverty. We grew up in real poverty. We sometimes when it was cold and we didn't have no wood, we were burning trash, you know. And I remember one time we were burning some trash because we had wood burning stoves. Like I said, I'm in the country. We didn't have ACs and HVAC systems and all this stuff. We didn't have any of that. But um, one time we were burning some trash and my mom got a hold of an old milk jug that my uncles had some bootleg liquor in, and she put that in the trash and it exploded. And
Mm.
she jumped back to the wall, right? And me and my brother were scared because the noise was kind of loud. Eyes were big, and she looked at us, and all of the hair around the edges of her hairline and all of the spine hairs on her face has been singed white, and she looked like a ghost. so,
Wow.
so she started laughing, and as soon as she started laughing, me and my brother lost it, and we just fell out laughing. And so like the backdrop of that is that we're poor, we're cold, and we're trying to stay warm, burning trash.
Right.
But the memory for me is laughter and love and this woman that is a fierce protector of me. And I didn't, so it's not bad memories, some of the best memories that I've had are those back in that time in that house that when it rained outside, it rained inside. We had pots and pans and buckets and catching water all throughout, until we were able to get the roof fixed, but it was just, family, love. My grandmother lived across the street, never missed a meal.
Oh, okay.
So
So you had loving experiences when you were, growing up, even though knowing that in your mind, there's no good outcome about to happen for the world. And as you get older,
yeah.
do you hold on more to those memories of apocalypse and what have you? Is that in the back of your mind, or do you let that go and just try to live?
For me, it's just a timeline that I can participate in or not now. But and the only reason I feel that way now is because the second NDE I started seeing other stuff, you know, and
So
seeing.
what I mean is like, like when we met, right?
Oh,
We
yeah,
met
that
when you
was
were in
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Tallahassee. Let's
Oh,
say
that
you're in
yep,
Tallahassee, you're in your 20s, right?
yeah,
And maybe early 30s when we met. Probably late 20s when we met.
exactly, yeah.
Um,
So yeah, that is in the back of my mind. All of that
Mhm.
stuff is yeah, like this is yeah. But I'm studying spirituality. I'm trying to understand things more, and
But what was your
the
passion to study spirituality? Because is it because you were like, we're gonna die and it's gonna be bad, so I need to know what's gonna happen after we're dead?
I just wanted to understand everything, and I had this deep spiritual orientation from childhood. One of the first books I remember getting as a child was the lost teachings of Jesus. You know, I
Hmm.
might have been 6, 7 years old. And these were just they were just some Gnostic texts
Hmm.
that made me start wondering, like, why is this not in the Bible? Why is some of this stuff not in the Bible? And that piqued my interest and made me ask a lot of questions at a very, very young age. So I was just kind of predisposed, and some of the things from the NDE make me remember, why. I mean, I didn't have any real concept of reincarnation, other than I just kind of suspected that it might have existed. But the way that people talked about it to me was always kind of fanciful. Like, we always are pharaohs, we always are kings and queens. Nobody swept up the floor. Like, who did that? Like, I mean, everybody was royalty, So I was pretty cynical about the way people talked about reincarnation. But now, I mean, as a child, I had memories of previous lives that I didn't know were previous lives. It was just recurring kind of dreams to me that happened. I could just go into that state and just remember being in these places, and most of it for me was like the end of the life of the person that I remembered, and I had these memories. But after my NDE, it was more vivid. But
Hmm.
for me, I think the predisposition is because of previous incarnations, you know, and it sounds contentious, and a lot of times I think it can be an ego sound like ego stuff when if you remember who you were, and it's an important person. But I was a spiritual advisor in one life, and to a leader, and that seems to be the orientation that I take most times that I incarnate here, is trying to help people understand and ground these spiritual concepts. So
So when you get the sense of what you're calling reincarnation, incarnate, I mean, are you getting it through meditation? Are you getting it through sleep? Or do these feelings and images come to you while you're wide awake? How does that work?
all of the above. Sometimes it's meditation. Sometimes it's like memories. It's just like it's stuff that is. Sometimes it's somebody asks you a question and you know the answer, and you don't understand why you know the answer because you've never been exposed to that information in this life. You know, and a lot of that has happened to me. Understanding stuff that I've never seen in this life, especially around spiritual stuff, spiritual mysteries, and stuff that people consider secret, but I've never viewed any of it as secret. I just think we lost our understanding of it, and people hoarded that information. We were losing our understanding of it, so it became secret, but it was never secret before.
Mm. So what spiritual systems did you study? So, but before you answer that, I just want people to know, just in terms of housekeeping, when David says NDE, he means near death experience. So you'll hear that term throughout our conversation. NDE, it's just a term it's an acronym for near death experience. So, what spiritual systems were you studying? Which ones did you gravitate towards? And which ones did you find to be most helpful?
Um, I studied everything. I mean, in high school, they called me Malcolm Farrakhan. In ninth grade, they called me Malcolm Farrakhan. But by the time I got to college, I was still studying Islam and Hadith, and then I moved into like Hinduism, Buddhism. Um, I had books on Jainism, um, all Eastern, pretty much any Eastern philosophy, Vedic texts. I liked spiritual texts. I used to always try to get the oldest spiritual texts I could find, and I have a lot. Um, and just delve into it and try to understand what the oldest orientations were. And so the what did stick is a lot of Hindu texts, a lot of Vedic philosophy and texts, um, Advaita Vedanta. I've had people from India tell me that what I share now is Advaita Vedanta. Um, I didn't deeply study Advaita Vedanta, but I understand it, and what I say based upon what I understand of Advaita, what I feel about reality based on what I understand of Advaita, is the same. It's just one experience. There's no duality. This is just one thing, and we can experience duality. I mean, because we are in a physical form apparently, but that's not what's really happening. This is a reflection of something else. Um, and but where I ended up landing, and it was still due to, you know, at that time it was due to just racial, orientations, racial trauma, and I wanted to ultimately get back to something that was Black, ancient Egyptian philosophy, the more practical and stuff that I would say inform my day-to-day practice. On top of meditation, would be just having a shrine and altar to various Orisha and my ancestors. So Haitian voodoo, um, and Ifa definitely heavily influenced me in the latter part of my 20s. Um, I never got initiated, but I always had the same way that I've always had these weird, anything that I seem to delve into, I have these weird dreams or spontaneous kind of experiences with the deities in that system. And this was no different with Ifa. I've I've had experiences with various Orisha that was a lot of information, and some of it is not consistent with the corpus. So I don't really share it because it might have just been something for me, But it sounded old. It sounded like it was the way things were, and and this is the way things are. And I don't know. I just always think I've from childhood I've always had what people call spiritual gifts. And I remember at age 5, 6 years old asking God to stop me from knowing things that I'm not supposed to know, and to stop me from having sleep paralysis and the stuff that I was experiencing as a child. And I didn't get any clarity from people around me. The most that people said around me when I was having all these experiences and knowing and knowing things was, especially with sleep paralysis, they said that the witch was on riding your chest or something like that, and the witch was riding you. I didn't even want no witch riding me. So it was traumatic just to hear that.
So, so describe sleep paralysis for people who don't understand.
I had very lucid dreams as a child that I was very aware in, very much in control of. Oftentimes, a bird flying, um, and I would just travel and look around at everything, and I enjoyed that. But I would wake up in my body, but I would still be flying, and I couldn't move, and um, and it was scary the first few times that it happened, and then I learned how to just wait, just wait, and I would come back into my body is what it seemed like. But it was scary, and it feels like when it first happened, I thought I was just suffocating. I felt like I couldn't breathe. I felt like I was dying. But the reality of it is that your body is so relaxed that you know you don't have to breathe deeply. So if you come back into your body while you're in full awareness because you're somewhere else fully aware, and your body is completely and utterly in a relaxed state, it's a there can be some panic there because the body in your mind the body isn't providing enough oxygen that it needs for you to be that alert, but you're still asleep. you know I don't know, and that may not even be an accurate explanation for it, but I didn't have any explanation for it when I was a child, so it just kind of scared me. So I would pray to God to take away all this stuff,
Hmm.
just knowing stuff, knowing people's thoughts, knowing people's past, knowing when adults were lying and losing respect for adults because I knew they were lying often.
Right.
And so I just asked God to take it away because it didn't really seem to help me. And I remember saying it again as a early 20s that somebody would ask people were asking me for advice and they said that I had some kind of wisdom or whatever I need to speak. And I was like, well, it never seems to help me.
Right.
Yeah, it just never seems to help me. It just helps people around me maybe, but I don't know. So
Okay. So let's talk about what happened to you recently, with your second near-death experience.
yeah. Well, yeah, the anger, all of that, carrying all that anger for my whole life. It started with my digestive system. I had digestive issues for years and years and years. Never connected that my temperament or my disposition was impacting that. Lost my gallbladder. Had two stones in my gallbladder the size of ping pong balls. You
Now
know,
this anger that you're talking about, here's the thing though, man. It's like anytime I met you, you were always smiling, man. You were always very jovial, very
yeah,
cool, very friendly. Like
yeah,
I've met people who are very abrasive, very angry. You could see it on them when you're around them. They're always complaining. They're always moaning about something. They're very rude. They're very short with people. They're very arrogant. They're not kind at all. You're completely the opposite. Every time I met you, maybe,
yeah,
I didn't spend enough time with you to see that other side of you, you know what I mean?
yeah.
But, I mean, yeah, you
Well,
said you were in love, but at the same time, it's like, um, angry people are angry people. And
mm,
yeah, the beast can be tamed, but that ugly head rears itself at the smallest provocations, you know.
mm,
I remember us having very intense conversations about different things and even debates about certain things. But you were always very generous with your intellect and even with disagreeing. We have mutual friends. We have one mutual friend who can be very disagreeable, and I never saw you handle him in, in a terrible way. You always did it with
mm,
wisdom, and you always did it with love. So, I mean, maybe it's that love that you got in your community and in your family that you still
yeah.
had in you, but I would have never, ever have identified you as an angry person those times that I met you.
I think is exactly what you're saying. It's kind of like my tribe. I felt like we were so traumatized, had been so oppressed that I could forgive anybody for anything, in my tribe. There were only a few people after I had developed this really centric, super black orientation. There were some people that were black that energetically rubbed me the wrong way, but I still wouldn't wish them any, ill will or anything. But my general orientation towards anybody black was, I love you, and we're supposed to be functioning in a certain way, and we're not. And
Mhm.
oftentimes that made me have resentment for black people because I felt like we were supposed to be doing certain things, but we're not. But I just wasn't going to direct a lot of my anger and hate towards who I felt were victims. Like we were victims of something that was atrocious.
Mhm.
And regardless of how ugly the adaptations we make in trying to thrive here or trying to make it here are, I'm going to just receive you, where you're at, you know, because of what I know you've been through, this collective, experience that we've had here. So I just wasn't going to really, unless I had it in, like it was some personal, I wasn't going to really direct a lot of venom towards very many black people. But there've been people, and I've been graceless. I've
Mhm.
made some mistakes, and there have been some people who I took a posture of, not really willing to apologize, because of just the nature of the relationship. I didn't really feel like I cared, whether there was reconciliation or not. And
Right.
now I just don't carry those same biases, and most people now, they're not going to trigger me in any way to where I'm going to take anything personally. It's just going to be, it's an idea that I'm contending with, not a person I'm contending with. So
Okay, so you have a buildup of anger, and I guess maybe you're seeing the people that you're angry at naturally from your childhood and your experience with the KKK marching around you and feeling threatened just for existing. Uh, this is all building up, you feel, as health consequences.
yes,
You're losing
yeah.
basically you're a walking mixture of stress chemicals.
That's it. And I'm not doing anything because I'm so hopeless. I don't feel really passionate about anything. So if you're not doing anything, but you're carrying all these chemicals that really need to get out of you, but they don't get out of you. So now this energy is inside of you building up, and it's gonna kill you.
Okay.
At least from my experience, it killed
Okay.
me. And so I feel like now, like when I speak to people about the emotional part of it, is
Mhm.
that we feel too much about everything, and we don't do enough towards the things that make us feel that way. If
Mhm.
you are angry, what is it that you're angry about, and what can you do? What do you have agency to do to impact you positively, to reduce that anger? And if you can't think through that because you're so triggered that you don't have access to executive functioning, which is
Mhm.
kind of where I was for years, then you're not able to fix any problems. And but still, the first step to fixing any problem is to get up and do something. And I was so isolated, so reclusive, and just didn't really care to get out and do a whole lot. So
So in this environment, you're saying that you have a brother. He's in the same environment. He's not having near death experiences, but like, your brother, how, how's your brother Cam Newton handling all of this while this is happening to you? I'm just messing with you. I had to throw that. I had to throw that in there, man. You're the most Cam Newton looking dude I ever seen.
that
So
is
I had to throw
hilarious.
that. You never been told that before?
Not I've been told a lot of people. I don't think I've been told Cam Newton.
Nah,
I
man.
think you've told me him before though,
Yeah,
and I
yeah. You
remember.
look like
Yeah,
Cam Newton, man. But no, but for real though, I mean, all jokes aside though, like your brother is growing up in the same household as you. I mean, he's not having the
yeah,
near-death experience. He's not having these kind of like previous life experiences. I don't know if he is, but he's growing up in that same environment. How's he navigating, in comparison to you? And how
yeah.
much,
That
what's the age difference?
he's 2.5 years older than me.
Okay.
Yeah. He did go through the anger thing because he was a little bit. My parents split for a while when we were young, and he was old enough to remember that. And I think he had some anger about that. But his personality is just a lot different than mine. Like he's not as severe. Growing up, especially, he was just laughing all the time, always wanting to have fun, and that helped me just being around somebody that wasn't as angry and intense as I was, being able to laugh with my brother. He was my best friend, and so everywhere we went, as far as the military, we were Army brats. That was my best friend. So I didn't have to worry about uh, I didn't have to worry about making friends, even though it was always easy for me to make friends. Um, I already had my best friend everywhere I went. You know what I'm saying? So I wasn't really the type of person that felt like I had to go anywhere or be anywhere all the time because my best friend lived with me. You know what I'm saying? And I was pretty reclusive. You know.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Okay. And so, when you're telling your brother about these feelings that you got about, previous lives, and I mean, what's that conversation like?
I don't even know if I ever told him
Oh,
about
okay.
any of this
You
stuff.
just kept it to yourself.
Yeah, yeah,
Interesting.
yeah.
You had no one to talk to about.
Mm-mm,
Okay. You made a
yeah.
conscious decision not to tell him because he's your best friend. Kids like to talk.
Yeah, I
You,
don't think I told anybody about the lucid dreams
Mhm.
until I got older.
Okay.
College probably is when I started talking about this stuff.
Okay.
It was just something that I prayed to God to stop happening, stop me from knowing this stuff, stop me. It felt like a curse to me as a child because nobody else talked about it. Nobody else, you know what I'm saying?
Right.
And so
So that's a
I,
hell of a burden to carry then, right?
yeah,
That's a
yeah,
that's a serious burden to carry, and you don't know when it's gonna happen next, and you don't know if you're crazy, you don't know
exactly.
what's going on. Okay.
I thought I was crazy. I thought I was crazy. I definitely thought I was different, than other people. And then I realized that everybody's different.
Mm.
The older that I've gotten, I realized that there is no normal. All we have is this spectrum of human expression, and it's just vast. It's a vast and broad spectrum. And if you are trying to be normal, like what is that? And I think for me, a lot of my childhood was spent with me trying to fit in and to be normal. And I didn't want that other information. I didn't want access to it. I didn't want to deal with it. It was overwhelming and it didn't really help me. So,
Okay. Let me hit pause real quick. I just gotta deal with plugging in my laptop.
all
Give
right.
give me about probably 30 seconds to a minute. I should be able
Okay.
to.
I'm gonna run the restroom too while
Yep.
we're doing it.
Great.
All right.
Yeah, we're back, man. I'm really enjoying this
Well,
conversation. Yeah, we're back. I'm really enjoying this conversation because we're just getting into a window into a brother's life, and some of the interesting things that he's encountered through his mind space that maybe the scientific world doesn't have an answer for, but we all know that, science not understood is usually classified as magic until it's understood. And then when that magic
Yeah.
is understood, it's classified as science. So
Yeah.
I just think that those of us who are interested in reaching beyond the understanding that exists today are always excited when we hear something new and something different, particularly if we know that the person is completely sincere in what they're saying. I think more of these conversations need to take place because I think it will increase the corpus of thought that we all have individually and collectively as a group. You know, you asked me
Yeah.
before if I've ever had any of these types of feelings or premonitions when we are just offline, and I could tell you that as a child, what I knew about myself or what I strongly believed about myself, and I still do, is I believed that I was born to do something more than average. And that's always stuck with me. And it might have just been a self-fulfilling prophecy that because I believe that, that's just how I've lived. So I've always wanted to have an above average life because I always believed as a child that I was born to do that. And, whenever you have a series of small victories, it pushes you in that direction. I'll give you a quick example. Some years ago, I had read about you talk about the atomic energy. Uh,
Yes.
I read about the scientist in Pakistan who was responsible for making Pakistan a nuclear armed country. Uh, he was a young boy in Pakistan, and he was really good at math and science. But apparently, he had a friend, and I think his friend's name was Khan. Last name is Khan, Khan. So I was reading the magazine about this guy's story. So he was very gifted, but he had a friend that he was growing up with, and this friend always told him, and I'm talking about like 8-year-old kids. This 8-year-old kid who was his friend told him that he believed that he was destined to become the president of Pakistan. The kid. And he always kept saying that. He always like, it's just my destiny. I don't know like why. I just this is what I feel. So it turns out that these two kids grow up and the kid who's good in the math and science ends up getting a scholarship to study in Britain. So he leaves Pakistan and studies in Britain and becomes a noted physicist and starts working in the laboratories and on projects on nuclear uh, weapons, nuclear energy in Britain. Turns out his friend, who he grew up with, who kept saying, and everyone thought he was crazy, that he's going to become the president of Pakistan, actually became the president. So when he
Yeah,
becomes the
man.
president of Pakistan, he leans on his homie, who was a kid with him, to say, listen, Pakistan needs to have this like scientific breakthrough, and we need to have access to these weapons too, because it would be a great deterrent. So at the time, India and Pakistan are like enemies, right? Because, the foundation of India and Pakistan was bloody. Really
Yeah.
it was for Indian Muslims, a nation for Indian Muslims, because the Hindu chauvinism was too much for them to take. So they were always in civil war. And there's a very interesting book about that migration. I mean, people literally walked from one country to the forging of a new country, Pakistan. And so they have this very unique history. And so they don't want to lose it. And they know that they need to beef up their army. And so that guy who becomes the leader of Pakistan, who basically had a self-prophesized feeling about himself or belief about himself and actually walked it through, taps into his friend. And his friend, the scientist, the Pakistani scientist in England, smuggles over the blueprints to nuclear reactors to his friend, the president of Pakistan. And that's how Pakistan ends up being a nuclear power. Um, so it's very interesting once a child has images of themselves as being someone great, right? Um, it it becomes something that you lean on, man, and it becomes something that you know is in the background for you. And I think it's yeah, I think that are you
Yeah,
there?
yeah. It went out for a second.
Yeah,
My yeah.
yeah. What's the last thing you heard me say?
Um, the he smuggled the
Blueprints?
blueprints. Yeah, and then it
Yeah.
kind of went away.
Okay,
Yeah,
good. Yeah, so I was just about to wrap that thought up. So yeah, he smuggled the blueprints to his friend, the president of Pakistan, and now they are a nuclear armed country. But the reason why I bring that up is that there is something to it when a child has a certain belief about himself or even the world or what have you, whether it's unfounded or not. But if they believe that they are destined to be great or to do something, it is something that they will, I believe, subconsciously lean on, and it will somehow fuel their efforts and will cause some type of catalyst to happen within life. And of course, things can happen life to derail you, but if you intrinsically believe that you were supposed to be great in some type of way, um, I think that it aids you in actually becoming great, right? You have to have that belief. And then if you think that you're supposed to be a terrible person or a failure in life, I think that that can happen as well because it's a self-fulfilled prophecy. You know what I'm saying? So,
yeah, yeah,
I mean, I do think that these things are important, but I think that when you talk to people who great, because I like to study biographies, man. Like I read a lot of biographies, right? And I
yeah,
watch biographies. And I think that the running thread with great people in history, they had some type of feeling or premonition about themselves.
yeah,
You know,
yeah,
they might not want to say it arrogantly, but they didn't choose it, but a lot of them did feel like they were supposed to be great at something. And I think that that gives you some type of compass towards separating yourself from the pack.
yeah,
You know, so I would imagine I would imagine there's a point in life where you don't see that this is a curse that's happening to you because you know you're praying to God to take this away from you. At some point, you're going to think it's a gift,
yes,
right? So
yeah,
that's what I want to talk about before we get to the NDE, or maybe the NDE has something to do with it. At what point did you transition? Because I think that's the healthiest way, um, is when you do have that transition of these gifts that I'm getting is necessarily not a it's not a curse, it's a burden, but it's actually something I could leverage towards my
yeah.
greatness, right? So at what point did you feel that these premonitions, these visions, these feelings that you were having was actually something that you could leverage as a gift rather than a curse? Because that changes everything.
Yeah, it took a long time. And you know what's it's only recently, honestly, that I even looked back at the circumstances that were surrounding why I felt um a kind of negative feelings towards having those gifts. And I was able to reconcile that and apologize, like forgive myself for
Mm.
not really even accepting myself because these things are just a part of who I am. You know, I'm going to always have information. Yeah, and now I just look at that as just a part of who I am. You know, um, whereas before I guess I didn't have, and I think the NDE did help me see these things as gifts, um, because I didn't understand what they were, like empathy. Like people, I've always heard people speak about being an empath, but would speak about it kind of in a way like, I don't know. It was just like they were happy to be one, you know.
Hmm.
And for me, having access to people's emotions when I wasn't even sophisticated enough to even understand those emotions wasn't something I was ever happy about. You know, I hadn't had, I was young, feeling the emotions of the people around me, and it was extreme a lot of the times, you know. So being an empath for me, my experience with that whole idea wasn't the same as somebody who's like, oh yeah, I feel the energy of people around me. It's like,
Mm.
yeah, I do. And it's people are confused and people are angry and people are sad and people, and I don't want to feel that all the time, you know. And for me, after the NDE, it became more intense. And for a moment I became even more, it was more torturous. Like I don't want to feel all of this information. But what made it easy for me is to what the near death experience did for me that I probably wouldn't have done for myself, because I was so fixed in how I viewed this reality, and I was pretty hopeless. Um, was that it dumped all of my past attachment to my previous ideology and identity orientations, and I didn't have any attachment to it. So without having a bunch of information constantly competing for my attention inside of me, getting that information poured into me from outside of me isn't overwhelming anymore. You know,
Mhm.
I always know that it's just information coming from outside of me because I'm not the information that I focus my attention on very intentionally is very specific, and it's always forward facing, and it's always hopeful. And outside of that, I don't think of anything else. So whenever I'm thinking of something that is um, has to do with emotions or has to do with confusion, I understand it to be something that is information that's just coming to me from outside, and I can process it. I don't have to own it, and then I can discard it. Uh,
When you
you
talk about
know,
information, you mean like the visions and the
yes,
yeah, right.
yeah,
So,
and also other people's. When you're around other people, there's a lot of information. So some of that bleeds into my awareness, and I'm aware now that that's happening versus before just feeling stuff, and my disposition would change, and I'm not really clear why, you know. And now just looking at all of the information in the same way, I can just see it and understand it and not have it affect my nervous system.
got it,
It's
got it.
just information. Yeah.
Okay. So let's talk about your nervous system. Let's talk about your health. So you felt at the age of what, 30, 35, your health starts to deteriorate?
Yeah. Having definite digestive issues that I'm ignoring. I would have these episodes because I guess I had already had those stones in my gallbladder at the time, but every now and then they would get caught in the neck of my gallbladder, and it felt like I was being stabbed through my midsection with a sword, and I would just fall to the floor and just scream. Sometimes it wouldn't change for 2 hours. And
Um,
all I could do in that period of time was scream. My blood pressure would shoot up because of the pain, and I would throw up. I would be throwing up, having migraine headaches, and the pain wouldn't ease up. And and the last few times that it did that, I knew I had to go. I was going to the hospital one time, and then it just stopped. And I was like, okay, I'm okay. But I was just in a state. I wasn't healthy enough to just say to myself, you need to get attention for this. I just kind of let things get worse and worse and worse until my gallbladder got to the point where I just had to have it removed because the pain, the day that I knew it was no going back to any kind of normal. It wasn't going to get the pain wasn't going to go away. It was like 7 hours of straight of just extreme intense pain, and I went to the doctor, and she before she even really looked at anything, she was like, "Well, surgery will probably be happening tomorrow." And I'm like, I got upset. I'm like, you can't just walk in here. I don't even. This is the first time I saw you, and you're telling me you're about to cut on me. You need to go look at some stuff. Go put me through some tests. Don't just come in here talking about cutting on something just because that's what you do. I kind of snapped on her.
mhm.
But then they put me through the test, and everything she said was confirmed. My gallbladder was messed up bad. It was irritated. There was two stones. One was stuck in the neck at the time, and that's why the pain wouldn't go away.
Mm.
And and um and they removed it. But after that, the hypertension, and then heart attack 3 years after that, 3, 4 years after that, you
Okay.
know.
Let's talk about so you realize that you had hypertension and coming from basically stress, right? Um,
Yeah,
wa-
yeah.
I mean, was there some dietary issues as well?
Um, I never really ate horribly. And maybe when I was a teenager, I ate horribly, but I was a football player and I was probably the best shape that I had ever been in my life. But as I got older, I didn't eat bad, so, and I did go through vegetarian stages. I went through a fruitarian stage, and then I went back to just eating, what I want to eat, but I still eat in moderation. I don't really eat a lot of food. A lot of it is, some habits that I developed that weren't very healthy habits. When I was having digestive issues, I just kind of didn't eat that much.
Right.
But now I think that, I'm getting close to 50. I just don't have the same appetite that I used to have. So I just don't eat that much anymore. So, and it's even like, so I don't necessarily think it was diet. I think it was my disposition. Being a
Sure.
really depressed and sad person, angry person, I think it sped up any kind of processes that I may have been going through slowly if had I not been in had those dispositions. So
Right. And a lot of stress too, right?
yeah,
This is all of cortisol. So it's like
yeah,
you got all the stress going on, not really understanding what's going on with you in terms of the burden that you're carrying.
yeah.
These these visions, this understanding of the world that you have at the time. So what was your highest blood pressure reading?
Man, um, probably 240 or 230 over. It had to be like 170, 68. Sometimes because I look at my numbers now and I look at the memories and I'm thinking like, am I exaggerating? But I don't. I know 230, 40 was my high.
Yeah. So the worst I've seen is 240 over 120.
Yeah, my bottom number diastolic was 160.
Yeah,
I remember. Yeah,
that's
yeah.
crazy.
It was one. Yeah, I don't want to lie and say anything higher than that, but it was definitely between 140 and 160, and I
Yeah,
think I
that's
remember
crazy.
160. Yeah,
Yeah, that's crazy numbers.
yeah.
So,
I saw a nurse see my numbers. There was two nurses standing by me when I went to the emergency room for my gallbladder, and the pain was so high that my blood pressure had spiked.
mhm.
Um, when the number came up, one of the nurses, she said, "Okay, girl, I'm gone."
She didn't want no
she
parts of it.
she didn't want no parts. She like he about to stroke out right here.
Right, right,
So
right. So let's
it's
talk
been
about.
yeah.
No, go ahead, go ahead.
Nah, so it's just been interesting, even just the health stuff and I had in that moment because when my blood pressure was that high and when I went up and they started bringing it down, they brought it down too fast. I had a mini stroke, a TIA,
Mm-hmm.
and there was a spiritual experience with that, and but some of it is just medical. It's just scientific. It ain't really nothing to look at in any kind of woo woo way. But I felt this electricity moving from the back of my arm up to my shoulders, and it went across, and it went to the back of this arm, and it went back up, and then it went up the back of my neck and to the top of my head, and then I heard like a pop sound, and then the electricity poured down my body like water. And it literally felt like somebody had a bucket of electricity and just dumped it on the top of my head, and it just
Mm-hmm.
poured down. I could feel the tingling all the way down my body, and that's when the stroke started. And shortly after that, my fingers clamped up, my mouth started going to the side, and there was a lady in front of me, the nurse, that was asking me a bunch of stupid questions that was really getting on my nerves. Like, because I told her I'm having a stroke, and she was like, "Okay, okay, can you do this?" And I said, "Well, I can't really do much with my hands because see this, I'm not doing this. They're just stuck this way." And then she kept talking, and she said, "Can you smile?" And my mouth had dropped to the side, and I was like, I can't really smile because my mouth is stuck to the side. I said, if you keep taking me through this protocol, you're going to be standing over a cadaver who stroked out. I said, can you please, can you
Right.
please go get some help coming this way? I'm having a stroke. And it started subsiding, and then I laid down. They did a scan and said there was no damage in my brain. Um, it felt like a spiritual thing. It felt like something happened. And I don't know. And it's just been an ongoing kind of things
So-
happening since,
Right.
from there too.
So the stroke happened first and then the heart attack?
The heart attack was probably 3 years later. Yeah.
Okay, so let's talk
Yeah.
about the heart attack. What were the symptoms that you were getting?
I had a birth defect in my aortic valve. I had a bicuspid aortic valve. So my heart beat extremely hard all my life. But if without the stress and hypertension and all that stuff, it wouldn't have been an issue. There are a lot of people who have it. It's not normal, but it ain't extremely rare either. But you have an aortic valve, and then you have stress and hypertension and all the other stuff. It's just it's a perfect combination to kind of lead you to a heart attack. So that valve in February 1st, 2017 ripped, and I felt it, but it didn't feel like it came from my heart. It felt like it came from, it was I have 7 herniated discs, 2 torn, 2 bulged, and so I always have pain in my back. So it felt like pain in my back and in my shoulder. So I never really associated that rip that I felt with my heart. So I'm holding my back and I look at my friend because we were just chilling, talking. And I said, hey, I said, my back pain just shifted gears and my eyes were real big because it was hurting real bad.
Mhm.
And we just kept talking.
The
And
herniated disc, they came from football.
yes,
Mm.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I used to try to kill people playing football all the time, man. I used to hit real hard. So
Oh, really?
yeah,
You,
yeah, I was
you,
a monster.
you sure you weren't a quarterback?
I did. I played quarterback. I
Yeah,
did for up until junior high school, but
yeah.
I was the size that I am now. I probably about 5 pounds lighter than I was when I was in high school, especially like my junior senior year. I was a big guy, and I wasn't like I was better running back. Yeah, I used to try to run people
Okay.
over.
So
Yeah, I
you,
was a
you didn't catch the quarterback joke.
yeah, the cam thing. I know. But I was headed in that direction, bro. I was
Right.
I was Mike Vick before Mike Vick. I was running touchdowns, bro.
Really?
Running. Yeah, I was running people over, man. Like they would blitz me, and I would be like, you gonna blitz me? I would run the
Okay.
blitzer over. I would
This is
run
in
the
Georgia?
blitzer. This was in the first year I played quarterback. Well, junior high school, I played quarterback. I was seventh grade. They would blitz me. And I would it was almost like I was offended that you blitzing me. You know
Right,
what I'm
right.
saying? So I would run the blitzer over and just keep running. You know, I wasn't the normal quarter. I was too big
Mm,
to be quarterback, but we didn't, and that school, we had a couple decent quarterbacks, but I was just better at the position.
right.
And so they made me play quarterback. But I was for me, I was defensive minded. I played linebacker, free safety. Free safety was probably what I would have been playing in college. I was being recruited to play free safety at Nebraska, at a few other
Oh, wow.
schools.
Okay, so you were
Yeah,
real good.
yeah, I was pretty good.
So you
Yeah.
got injured and it took you off
Yeah,
from
I had surgery in 11th grade. And when I came
wow.
back, I still played, I still was being recruited, but I didn't feel the same in my mind about it. And I remember before I graduated from high school, I was like, if I was a gambling man, would I bet on a bad knee or a good brain? And I
Right.
and I chose a good brain, so I took academic scholarships. Instead I started looking more at academic scholarships than athletic scholarships.
Okay.
And the lucky thing about it is that I was very smart, so I had 3 trash bags of scholarship offers for academics and 2 trash bags of scholarships offers or interest letters for football, and some for baseball. Not much for baseball, but I was good at football and baseball. So
Okay. All right. And that's when you start getting involved in computers because I know that's
that came later. Yeah, that came. I graduated from college and went and I was teaching for a while, and then I hated the school system. They were trying to get me to put kids on the track to special ed that didn't need to be on the track to special ed. They were just wanting them because they get money for that, $10,000, I think. And I just wouldn't do it. And they kept putting people in my classroom to give me bad review, like bad. They were monitoring, so they would give me bad ratings and just talking negative about me all the time. So I
think the your internet froze up a little bit right there. Let me see.
of getting 10 kids to put them on this track for special ed. And I was like, I'm not going to do that. What I see now as a teacher is that I didn't have power to change the system. You know, I said, but what I'm not going to do is be a part of the problem. I'm not going to do this, and I resigned. That was the most stressful part. One of my friends, before I resigned, I called him and he was at work, but so I got his voicemail. And he said he kept that voicemail for years. And he said he laughed like his stomach was hurt laughing at it every time. Because he's like, because when I called him, I was trying to decide if I was going to quit. And I was like, man, these people trying to get me to sign these.
I think the internet froze up a little bit right there. Hopefully to come right back on, y'all. But we want to make sure that we catch everything that the brother's saying.
And I love the kids. I enjoyed the teaching. I just couldn't stand the politics and I couldn't stand all that other stuff. So, uh, yeah,
All right, let's get back to
yeah,
uh what you were saying about that day with the heart.
yeah,
So the herniated disc is there, but the back pain is feeling a little bit different than what you've been feeling with the herniated disc.
yeah. It was extreme, and but I went 7 days and just kind of I normalized it at some point because at the first couple of days I literally was walking around trying to hold my shoulder up because it felt
Mm,
like it was ripping off. Like it literally felt
wow.
like my shoulder was ripping off, and I was just doing like this, holding it, for a couple of days, and then I normalized it. Like playing football, you kind of get stupid when it comes to pain. You just, am I hurt or am I injured?
Right.
If I'm hurt, I can, tape me up, get me back in the game. If I'm injured, you go see the trainer, you get worked on. I was able to walk, I was able to go to work, so I was just had to hold my shoulder. I was
Mhm.
just injured.
Right.
So, but 7 days later, I felt an actual sting in my chest, in my heart, and and then my breath immediately. I was like, oh, it affected my breathing, and I was walking out of my job, and I was asked this lady because I started sitting in the chair for a long time. I asked if she needed a ride home. She said the ride was nearby, and so I said, "Okay, goodbye." And then the guy, I walked outside. The guy said, see you tomorrow, Mr. Williamson." And I stepped off the curb, and I'm like, "Oh no, like this ain't right." And I'm trying to decide in that moment, should I call 911 now, or should I just get home? Is it something normal? So I get in the car. I just drove home, and I'm in the middle of this. I'm feeling all this weird stuff. I'm having to breathe a little bit deeper to keep my breath. I get home, I'm thinking, okay, I had the gallbladder stuff. Sometimes when I would not eat, I would have those episodes. I was like, maybe I just need to eat something. And so I ate something and nothing changed. It was actually getting worse. I called my son's mother worked from home, so she was upstairs. So I told her I need to go to the emergency room. I said my chest is messing up, my heart is messing up, and it's not getting any better. And on the way is when I really was losing my breath. And and so by the time I get to the emergency room, there's a guy there asking me to sign papers, and I'm trying to keep from passing out. So I cuss him out. But as I'm cussing him out, I guess they did, send some people out with the gurney. I apologized to him later because I didn't want him to feel that way. And after I had the experience, I understood feelings and emotions and stuff differently. So I went back and apologized to him. But immediately once the gurney came, I was on the gurney in like maybe 20 seconds. I was out. But I remember they were pushing me and we were turning the corner, and I could see the doors that I was going to go through where they were going to be working on me. But I blacked out before I got through those doors. So sometimes people say these are hallucinations or you know what I'm saying, stuff like that. But I was already blacked out before I got into that room. But when I opened my eyes, when they resuscitated me, I knew the room. You know what I'm saying? I learned the room while I was out of my body, looking at everything outside of my body. I didn't know that room before I got in there. But when I came out, when I opened my eyes, I immediately was trying to find the woman that I saw when I was out of my body. But and I asked the guy in front of me if he was okay because I felt his energy when I was out of my body. But shortly after I went around that corner, I was out,
Wait,
and I
hold on, hold on, hold on, hold on. When you're out of your body, you asked the guy in front of you if he was okay.
well, when I came back,
Oh, when you came back. Okay.
when I could feel that he was. I was trying to communicate with both of them while I was out of my body, but they didn't see me and they didn't hear me. So, but
So you could see everything that's happening to you.
yeah, I wanted them to understand that what I was experiencing was beautiful. And they were both, the woman was holding her face with both of her hands like this. She was really distraught that I was dying. And
She
and
was
I
a
wanted,
nurse.
I don't know. She was I forgot that I actually remembered seeing her when I opened my eyes, but from above, when I would left my body, she looked like my aunt. Her energy felt like my aunt, and that's kind of who I thought it was when I was out of my body. I think,
Mhm.
and when I came back, and that's why, because I was attached to her. Her feelings and her feeling bad that I was dying affected me. It
Mm-hmm.
affected me. I didn't even look at my own body. I wasn't even concerned about my own body. I was concerned about her, and I was concerned about the guy holding the defibrillator pads because he had
Mm-hmm.
taken on. He had in his mind, it was like he didn't want me to die while he was there and being responsible. He didn't. He
And
didn't want me to die on his watch, and he took on a lot of pressure, and I could feel it. And so when I opened my eyes, I immediately blurted out, "Are you okay?" And I was looking for the woman, and then I asked him if he was okay. But
was the
going back,
woman there?
yeah, she was there, but I forgot that she was there. And then a Facebook memory popped up, and and I was like, "Oh, she was there." But it was a young woman that didn't look like the woman that I saw when I was out of my body,
Okay.
And she
Interesting.
might have been new, or she might have been somebody that was just there to record the time of death or something, because she was not involved with the resuscitation effort. She was in the back corner of the room watching, and then her hands went up over her face.
Mm.
And I don't know if that was what I was seeing while I was out of my body, because I was supposed to, she wanted my attention back here so that I wouldn't just go, because I wasn't going to come back here. When I got in there and I came out of my body, I looked down. I understood immediately what was going on. One of the first thoughts that I had, it was still human thoughts, were like, oh, so this is how it happens. And then I looked at the bottom part of my body. I didn't look at my face. I don't know if it was because people were around me and I couldn't see it, but I don't remember seeing my face. Um, and I said, he's dead. You used to be there. His mind is dead, his body is dead, and his ego is dead. And and I said, well, what remains? What am I now? And a bunch of words flooded in at the same time, and it was soul, spirit, energy, awareness, consciousness, light. Um, and I
This is
understood
what's happening when you are
out of my body,
out of your
looking.
body.
Yeah.
And in the hospital room, are they pronounced you dead?
Well, they're defibrillating me.
Hmm.
My heart isn't beating,
They're
and
trying to revive you.
yes,
Okay.
yes,
So you're in
yeah.
limbo at this moment.
Yeah, just watching it all. Yeah.
Okay.
And I'm not attached to it. Like, I'm not attached to the body. I'm not sad. It's not, whoa, I'm dead. It's like he's dead.
Mhm.
Yeah, like,
So you
and
felt like a separate person.
yes. Yeah.
Okay.
And
You're
then
basically like an observatory role, watching
yeah,
this
yeah,
person that you know was you on Earth, but now like you're separate from that person
yeah.
and you feel good.
I feel perfect. I feel like I woke up for the first time, you know,
Mhm.
and I'm experiencing real reality for the first time. And
Are you
and
cognizant of that while it's happening, or are you cognizant of it like afterwards?
I'm cognizant of it immediately. When I leave my body, I'm immediately aware that there is no pain, no confusion, no pressure in any part of me, no tension, no. It was just a perfect state. I was in a perfect state, and I was very aware of it because I had just come from a not so comfortable state. you know,
Right. Now, were
and
you also feeling, a lot of people report with their near-death experiences, they feel this immense feeling of love that they never felt.
yeah,
Well, did you
the,
feel that as well?
yes, everything felt like that, and I felt like that. I felt like the entire physical part of it. You know, I felt like I was integrated with all of it. I felt like I understood it all. Um, the love, though, is very tangible. It's not like just a feeling, a word. It's like something that you feel.
Mm.
And the closest thing I can describe it to is the first time that I had sex with somebody that I was deeply in love with. The orgasm was different. Like, it was a full body kind of,
Right.
out of this world thing. Multiply that times 10,000. Like, that's
Yeah,
what that
that's what I was
felt
going to
like.
ask you. I was going to ask you
Yeah.
about like because you talked about, when I met you, you were in love. I was going to compare that feeling to the feeling of love you had
Yeah.
your near-death experience. So the near-death experience was many times orders of magnitude stronger than that feeling.
Yeah. But the analogy of it feels like that. Like the way that we love our children,
Mm.
the way that we love our partners, the way that we love our mothers and fathers. Like, multiply that by 10,000. Like if you are capable of thinking of someone and getting goosebumps and
Mm,
the hair standing up on you, multiply that feeling by 10,000, because that's what, to me, love makes me feel that. Like
mm,
I get goosebumps and I'm aware of it now every time it happens, that when I'm feeling something for someone and my hair stands up, I know that's that's akin to what I felt when I was out of my body. It's an electricity. It's a tangible feeling. It's
mm,
not just a word, that we just throw around kind of willy nilly. Like I feel it. You have to feel it. Like we
mm.
speak about love, but I think we have to learn how to feel it. You know. You
So
know.
it's so overwhelming that did you want to stay there?
Yes. I wanted to travel. What I saw immediately because I watched for a while, and the last phrase that I heard was, "You killed yourself with your personality." And I knew what that meant. I was depressed and I was angry.
Was it a male
Uh,
voice or a female voice where you
it
heard?
was it, it
Didn't.
was it was a male voice, and it was pretty clear um, what it was saying. Like I was, and it was, and that contributed to my sickness. That contributed to my perspectives. That contributed to my inability to see any goodness in this human experience. So um, I knew instantly what that meant, and I think coming back like that, well, and then going through so I watched all of this for a
Mm,
while after that phrase came, and could you pause for 1 second? Can we pause for one
absolutely.
second? Because
Absolutely.
he's vacuuming right out the door.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. So you're in this space and you're feeling great.
Yeah,
You don't want to come back.
nah. So after I hear the phrase that I killed myself with my personality, I watch everything for a while. I'm still seeing the woman holding her face, and that's bothering me. I want her to know that this is a beautiful experience and nothing's. I'm not experiencing anything traumatic. This is just a beautiful experience. So I casually kind of just look up at the ceiling, and then I just go, and I'm in. Initially, I know I'm away from Earth, but initially I'm in this dense black space that yeah, I guess people call that the void. It felt like everything was there. It felt like love, the same thing. It felt like as I was out of my body, it felt perfect. But it felt like everything was there, and there were like faint images of faces, of places, and it would come close. But I couldn't focus on it, and if I focused my attention, once I focused my attention on anything, it would just disperse like smoke. But it felt dense. It felt like I was literally moving through something that was tangible, like velvet, you know, and very black.
Mm,
And it felt like home. Like it felt the same way people speak about the light. The void felt the same to me. And then when as I was coming out of the void, I'm looking down into it. It looks like a black hole. And when I look out into space, I see blackness of space, but I see other patches that look like that are blacker than space. So I know that these voids are out there. They're more than just one, and but it looked like a black hole when I look down into it. And when I look into it, any thought that I have, any question is instantly clarified before the thought or question is even complete, you know. And the way that it behaved was my interaction with it seemed to make it do things, but the things that it did was just twirls. It was like I would get an immense amount of information from just a movement, a twirl in the void that would have just slight discoloration, no real tangible images, but I would see colors and the swirl, and I would know instantly what it is that I was thinking about. And I watched that for a while because I was fixated on that void for a while. And then when I brought my attention up, what was in front of me was a star forming region, and It was beautiful, like the cotton candy colors, the blues, the pinks, um, down to the white clouds, and then in the middle, I was seeing the faint light of stars forming, and the words that I heard in my mind were, "So this is where stars are born." And I watched that for a while, and I was amazed by it. It felt like holy ground. It felt sacred, to see where the stars were born. Um, and then I looked around. I could see the light that people talked about, and the light for me was up and to the right, and it was very, very far away from me. Um, yeah, and yet it still had an attractive kind of force that if I did not move myself, I kind of floated in that direction, you
Mm.
know.
Towards the
Uh,
light.
yeah, but I didn't. I seemed to understand that the light was something else, and I didn't want to experience that something else. I
Okay.
didn't want to have another experience. I didn't want to go anywhere, and I also seemed to understand that it was like I just didn't want to go there. What I was more. It was beautiful. It felt like love. It didn't. There was nothing negative that other than I knew that it was an experience that I wasn't interested in. I wanted to travel because I was so amazed by everything that I was seeing that every few seconds I would say, ah. And when I said, ah, the distance between me and whatever I was looking at disappeared and I would shoot there like instantly. And I knew everything about it and I knew everything about the space that I covered to get to it. And it
Mhm.
was almost like I was becoming that space and coming one with the space that I was traveling as I was moving through space. Um, I saw this asteroid and I remember vividly it was reddish colored and it had a belt around the far side of it. Not it didn't seem like the belt covered the whole asteroid, but it covered the middle and half of it. I saw an image of this Bennu asteroid that the NASA has been speaking about in recent years, and it has this belt, and then that was weird to me. And I
Spinning
also
asteroid.
Bennu, the Egyptian, the Bennu
Oh,
bird,
the Bennu.
Bennu.
Okay,
Yeah,
okay,
they named this asteroid Bennu.
okay.
Uh, I, s- the asteroid I saw has very similar characteristics as Bennu, a belt, like a belt around half of the asteroid. Um, I had suspicions that the black hole that I was in was Sagittarius A, and the asteroid that's in the center of this galaxy. Um, but some of the stuff that I saw after that didn't fit. It wasn't. They're not close enough to Sagittarius A for me to have been seeing all of those things together, unless I truly was moving through space extremely fast. Which
Are you
could have.
are you are you aware of yourself at the time? Other words, like, are you able to describe yourself at the time? Are you just like an orb? Or you light?
I'm an
Are
orb.
you
I'm an
okay?
orb. So, and the way that I've realized that I'm an orb is I was looking at the light that people speak about, the light. And
Mm.
then I took my attention from the light back down into the emergency room, and my attention went through me. And when my attention went through me, all that I could see was light shining, a bright, round orb of light. And yeah, so I was an orb of light, and I didn't have memories of like anything that I saw. I couldn't say, "Oh, I read about this. I remember this." There was no reference, no historical reference points for anything. I was only in the moment, and everything was incredible, and the learning was instantaneous. The
Mm.
integration was instantaneous, and
What color was the light that you were? The orb.
white.
It's white. So you're
Yeah,
white and it's round.
yeah,
Okay, and it's moving.
yes. You
Okay.
talking about the light, the orb that I am, or
Yeah.
the light?
No, the
Yes.
light that you are.
Yeah, it's a white, bright, bright light.
And are there other orbs around you aside from this distant one that you might be gravitating towards?
Well, I could see stars.
Okay, so there was others.
Other star way away though.
You
They were far
separated the
away.
stars from other orbs, though.
Yeah,
You were clear
yeah,
they were stars.
yeah. This because I didn't. I can't. I can't. I'm not clear on what my size was.
Got
All
it.
right. In the vastness of space, I felt like a tiny thing.
Mm-hmm.
And so, if I was a star, space is just huge enough to where you still feel like a tiny thing.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
You didn't feel alone because
I
there's
never
a
felt
voice talking
alone.
to you.
Yeah.
and there's answers being given to you
Yes.
that you have. Now, I wanted
I,
to just kind
yeah.
of like focus there because, and we've talked about this offline before, that the reason why I was so fascinated with near-death experiences is, for one, I've always wanted to know, like, what is the reality of what happens when people die, right? You hear religious texts, you hear whatever. I've never been convinced that anyone actually knows, right? Uh,
Yeah.
but to me, the most compelling are the people who've been pronounced dead or had to be, what they have to say. And it turns out that a lot of them have unified stories. And then those stories somewhat are congruent with the stories of people who have DMT experiences or
Yes.
dimethyltryptamine experiences where they feel like their personality is blasted to a different dimension. In this dimension, you see all these types of colors, but then you get to a space. When you break through the space, you are in a place where you have your answers to the questions that you have, that are shown to you or somehow intimated to you. And the people who come outside of from the other side of the DMT experience or ayahuasca experience, they feel like they've had an ego death. They
Yeah.
feel a unification with all living things, with everything. They feel like their personality has completely changed. They feel a lot of love, and they are looking for the commonalities of living things as opposed to the divisions of living things. And this is pretty much, across the board, man.
Yeah.
Um,
And that sounds like my orientation. So,
right.
um, and what I've I don't see any hierarchy in these experiences, because since I've shared mine, a lot of people reach out and just share their experiences and they want to talk. And I've heard people, this one lady, she was getting dressed to go out with her friends. And as she gets done and she's waiting for her friends, no drugs, no alcohol, no anything. She says she just goes somewhere else while she's laying there just waiting for her friends. And it changed her the same way it changed me. The language that she uses to describe is the same language I use to describe my near-death experience. Um, the process that is probably healthy to go through afterwards, she's going through it now and is trying to understand what happened,
Mhm.
how and that's something that I think some people are we get because you have these sensitivities after you have these experiences that can be distracting, almost like quote unquote gifts, and but if you don't go past that and actually just try to understand why you're different, why are those gifts magnified, what changed inside of you, I don't think you fully get what happened and you don't fully ground it and integrate it in a way that to where you can talk to people and your nervous system isn't triggered. You know what I'm saying? And because this is for me, it's a cautionary tale that happened to David. you know, I'm not that person anymore. Like I'm not triggered. I'm not attached to the ideology. I'm not attached
Okay, let's get it.
emotionally.
All right, so let's get into
Yeah,
it, right? So you and again, this is very parallel to people with dimethyltryptamine experiences. And it said that, when you die, well, there's two times when you have rushes of dimethyltryptamine because your brain makes it. One when you're in deep REM sleep, and then also when you're about to die, your brain is supposed to be flooded with DMT,
yeah,
right? So
yep,
it seems as if people who are taking DMT are actually simulating a near-death experience, and that's why the
yeah,
stories tend to be kind of the same. But let's just talk about your particular journey. So you are thrust into this whole new world where you're feeling love, you're feeling no pain, you're feeling happy, you're feeling free, and you're getting information. You are very comfortable there. Are you feeling any type of way about the people you might have left behind at that moment?
I don't even
Or
the
is it that you're now a different person?
it seems like I was different in the emergency room. When I was still in the emergency room, some of my early thoughts were disappointment about not having money saved for my family or my son and his mother. And but that after I went through that void and I was in space, I didn't really even remember being a human being outside of looking back into the emergency room and seeing the woman holding her face and remembering, having compassion for her and wanting her to feel better about me dying.
Mhm.
I didn't have a lot of personal references to my life. Like I didn't have access to that. It was gone, it seemed.
Like
And
baggage that you left alone.
yeah, it was done. I didn't even like in trying to understand, like looking at the asteroid, I looked at enough space images and stuff as a child in a young adult, and even in my adult life to be able to say, oh, I remember seeing something like that. But I didn't have access to even personal memory. I didn't have access to personal history. All that I seemed to be when I was in space after the void was attention. And everything I looked at, it was like, ah, and I would move there and know what it is instantly. I would say, ah, I would move. It was like being a child again. It was like when I was from my childhood, how I was amazed by everything as a child. I used to dig holes and try to find artifacts and fossils, and everything was magical to me as a kid. This kind of felt like that. Like this, everything was magical. And I was just in this stage of just wonderment and learning the reality that I found myself in. And all I wanted to do was travel. I did not have any interest in going to the light and at all because
Mhm.
it felt like that would be the beginning of something else that was out of not really what I was in my choosing. It was it was already a created experience. It was already a created thing, and I could go there and have that experience, or I can just travel and experience what's here. For me
Right.
to see, and I was more intrigued with traveling. And the last time that I was just out in space and I was seeing stars in the distance and I was just moving and I was happy and and I was just moving and then I looked into the my attention went back into the emergency room and I still saw the woman and I went back this last time and I'm trying to talk to her. I'm like, it's beautiful. This is beautiful. Like this is an amazing experience. Like
Uh-huh.
I wish you understood it. You shouldn't
Right.
feel this way. I was just trying to get her to understand
Right.
it.
Don't cry
And
for me, Argentina, you know?
yeah, exactly. But then I was resuscitated, and I was resuscitated while my attention was in the
Okay.
emergency room. So as soon as my eyes opened, I just blurted out, "Are you okay?" And I was pointing and like kind of leaning over trying to find her. And I think I saw her, but I don't remember any response or anything because I think they kind of laid me back and was like, and then I asked the guy in front of me, "Are you okay?" And he cut me off and he said, "Are you okay?" You know,
Right.
he said, and a guy from the right um, said, "You didn't feel that?" And I guess he was talking about the defibrillation, but I was about to say, "Feel what?" But as soon as he said it, I kind of looked down and I saw this gel pad on my chest that had two indentions that were the same size as the defibrillator pads that the guy was still holding in front of me, and I was like, "Oh!" That's when it hit my human mind.
Hmm.
Oh, that all that really happened. You was dead, you know. And and one other funny thing happened when I laid back. That was the face of a white guy that was like literally this close to my face. I turned and looked at him, and he looked like Shaggy from Scooby Doo. And he had this real wild look on his face. His eyes was really, really wide open. And he said, "What did you see?" And I don't even know if he was a real person or still me in between worlds or seeing, spirit or whatever. I don't know. But I didn't have a lot of energy to talk about everything. So the thing that I said was, and I put my eyes up just like, and I remember this because I was silly as hell, but I said, blackness. And
Yeah.
then I kind of like faded out, like I was tired or something, because I don't remember much after that. Like I think I just passed out and went to sleep. But that experience changed how I look at everything in this life, and it filled in a lot of the gaps. Because I always ask questions. I was always wanting to understand. I no longer believe in death. I'm not an expert. I've only died twice. you know,
Right.
you know. But
Right.
and I read and about and heard a lot of different experiences, and there's 8 billion plus human beings. There's 8 billion plus experiences that are nuanced and very specific in particular, and they're going to be 8 billion plus deaths, and they're going to all be very nuanced and very particular and specific. Yet they're going to have this very similar backdrop, the same as the human experience has. There's a unified field that we exist in the same way. I think when we leave here, there's a unified part of this experience that we're having outside of the body. I think all of this is just one realm, whether you're in a body or out of the body. And I think having access to the perspective that you gain when you are good at leaving your body, like a lot of people who astral travel and who are able to or who have psychedelic experiences and are able to maintain control of their awareness in those experiences. There's so much opportunity there in just having that perspective because it's a perspective that is above your mind, you know, and it's very useful. And it because you are able to observe your life dispassionately and see and make decisions that aren't based upon your personal bias. It's just based upon having access to a perspective that is a little higher and might be able to see the outcomes of these different choices and these timelines. It may literally see the timelines, and you can choose timelines that are more befitting to you. But you have to understand that that perspective is there for us, and our ancestors have talked about it in different ways throughout history. I mean, the Haitian voodoo called the Gobonans, Tibonans, the Ori, Kaba. Like there's different parts of our spiritual anatomy that our ancestors always understood, and they even employed different things to protect it and to keep it from being manipulated. Like we've understood this spiritual technology for millennia, and we've forgotten a lot of this stuff. But I think that um, AI is an opportunity, in terms of recovering some of our ancient wisdom because we can translate Hebrew, Greek, Phoenician, all the way back to Egyptian, Demotic, and literally there are some quotes that come from uh, ancient Egypt that are found in the Bible. And when you ask why is that, you start realizing that these some of these pyramid texts are just talking about lineages and the things that happened during one reign, and then as one reign transitioned to the next, and and the way that the Egyptians talk about it there's a time period of the gods, the demigods, and the mortals. All of this is recorded, and people took these stories, in my opinion, and they're just lineages of gods, demigods, and humans from leadership perspectives in the context of ancient Egyptian culture. And everybody became gods. The pharaohs became gods. And sometimes when we're talking about God's will and the way that it's being reported in contemporary religion, it's not God's will. It was that pharaoh's will, who was deemed God, based upon misunderstandings of how we interpreted this stuff. But you literally can find almost full sentences in the Bible that are, if you quote it, if you do the quoting properly and put the right words back with the right symbols, they come straight from ancient Egyptian tomb texts and pyramid texts. So, what is Christianity? What is Judaism? You know, if they're not distinct from Egyptian culture, what are they?
Right.
You know, they're not. These traditions go all the way back, and the words that we use to talk about what we're doing have changed. But
Okay.
those traditions are our traditions, and they're all of our traditions. These are not, because Egypt was not a place that was only inhabited by Africans. That people, once Egyptian culture became clear that it was a high culture, people traveled from all over the planet to study in Egypt. Um, it was a pretty uh, multicultural, place.
Mhm.
And when people left, if they came to copy stories off of walls or out of monuments, and they went home, um, over time, if for example, there were leaders in the Egyptian cultures that's written about that were exiled, and some of them were sent to uh, places that are now considered like the Middle East, like the Levant region. Uh,
Mhm.
uh, that makes it clear that the Levant area was Egypt. It
Mhm.
was Egypt, you know. And but when you're separated from Egypt proper by that amount of space and mileage, the things can deviate, things can change, and especially if you are an exiled person that comes from Egyptian culture that is separated from, you're going to create a whole different tradition that's based upon your trauma,
Right.
based upon your being exiled, and it's not going to write the Egyptians in a positive light. They're going to be negative because they did you in your mind dirty because of your orientation.
Right.
But you're not going to. And most of these stories that people create about themselves don't speak about why they got exiled.
Right. So let me ask you, yeah, exactly. Let me ask you a question though. In terms of
Yeah.
how this experience affected your personality and your worldview from being angry to no longer being angry. And I'm gonna ask you a question by analogy. When you come back from your near-death experience and you have this enlightening moment, where your understanding of the world is different. Um, are you somebody based on what you experienced? Are you somebody who was left-handed or right-handed, but let's just go with left-handed? Were you left-handed and the experience taught you that you need to be right-handed? Or were you somebody who was left-handed and the experience rendered you naturally right-handed?
I think it's a little bit of both, but I lean more towards the latter because I don't seem to be capable of being the way that I used to be. And in some ways that I explain that is that
In other words,
the
you're not capable of throwing with your left hand anymore.
no, no, I don't seem to be capable of it
Okay.
because it's because I learned why I chose to be left-handed, and it was not a choice. It was a trauma reaction. It was reaction to pain. It was a reaction to confusion. It was a reaction to anger and hate. And
So
when
because
I,
that experience removed your trauma, there was no more necessity or need to throw with your left hand.
yeah,
So that was a trauma releasing experience, basically.
totally, yeah. And now, when you don't have a story to tell about why you're who you are and about now what you need to do as a result of why you are who you are, you just don't feel pulled in any direction as it relates to any of these stories. And
Does that create a lonely space for you then? Because
no,
what I'm saying is that if you've cultivated all of these relationships based on a certain attitude,
yeah,
right? You have a certain circle of friends and they
yeah,
all believe the same things and they have the same world view as you, whatever it may be. And all of a sudden now, one day you're different. You don't believe in those things anymore. Do you want to hang out with the same people anymore? Or how do you adjust
yeah.
to the world?
Well, I think, and to a certain extent, I was probably one of the more extreme. I had one of some of the more extreme perspective. If you look at my posts on Facebook from, the years where I was still angry, it's consistent. Like police brutality is me writing about how I feel about policies, me might writing about what I feel about what's going on in another country where I feel like the United States or European nations are meddling. It was just consistent anger and trauma, you know, person getting shot, people getting killed, me, you know what I'm saying? And it's just me responding and reacting to it emotionally, angrily, and posting a bunch of words about it. But um I wasn't doing shit. So it's like why trigger people and then not provide any means for them to use that energy towards something productive, you know? And I was triggering myself more than anybody. So oftentimes the relationships with other people with me now are less tense because I was the most intense of the two of the and now I'm not. So now they get to be able to say some of their things that they like, man, yeah, you were way out there. I didn't think that. Like I just had to be quiet because your ass was crazy, you know? So now
Okay.
I actually get some of the relationships are way more authentic now. Some of them are me. Sometimes I'm recognizing like I don't want to hear that shit no more. And sometimes I tell people I was like, sometimes I say, uh, I felt that way, and you know it. You were around me when I felt that way. I said, but if I don't attach those feelings to any kind of habit or behavior, then I totally ignore all of the agency that I have to improve my reality. And all I'm going to do is just feel. And that's what my experience showed me is that all I was doing was feeling, and talking shit. I
Right.
wasn't doing anything. So if you ain't gonna do nothing about what you feeling and talking shit about, shut the fuck up. Shut
Right.
up. Because you are just triggering people and you're not showing them how to get untriggered. You know what I'm saying? And so for me now is that my attention is my attention. I see things that I would like for this world to move in the direction of, and that's where I put my attention. I'm moving my habits towards. being able to reinforce that. I try to embody the things that I talk about. Agency is important. Understanding brain function, understanding that my amygdala was extremely enlarged and triggered in the first 40 years of my life, and whatever happened to me now, my amygdala doesn't inform my decision making as much. I can't listen to myself make excuses about why I'm not doing something when I know that the reason why it's not done is because I haven't done it.
Right, right, right. So it gave you more self accountability as opposed
Yes.
to look at me,
Yeah,
I've been victimized.
exactly. And it's not to belittle the experiences. It's just to say, okay, you feel that, you feel that, you feel that. You don't want to feel it anymore, right? So what can we do to reduce the likelihood of us feeling that again? What can we change? What habits can we change? What perspective can we change to where we don't feel uh, completely and utterly hopeless? Like given this anger, like given this putting so much anger and emotion towards a person, an idea, it totally removes agency from yourself. Like you don't even have access to executive functioning because when you think of this thing, you're triggered. So now all of your thoughts, everything you express are just triggered violent ideation. It doesn't lead to solutions. It doesn't lead to even internal peace,
Hmm.
you know? And so for me, it's like everything you feel and think about reality, if it's negative and if it's negatively affecting you, if you don't find habits or learn virtues or learn values, morals, or something that can move you in the opposite direction of the negative things that you're feeling, then you're killing yourself slowly, you
Right.
know?
So do
Yeah.
you feel like, well, let me put it this way. David Williamson physically died, but do you also feel like David Williamson died? Do you still feel like David Williamson? And the reason why I'm saying that is that there's a lot of people who had DMT experiences and they feel like they're actually no longer the person that they were before, to the point where they've just changed their name. And they have
Yeah.
a whole different identity because that old person is not me, and I don't want to be attached to any of the feelings or anything that old person did. I want to be attached to the history of this new person.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think the most important thing for me in remaining time that I have here is to be relatable, is to connect with people, is to, to share my story in such a grounded and integrated way that it just gives people hope just because it's relatable. And I think that the more people try to embody, uh, an idea of a guru, an idea of a highly evolved spiritual person, they become less relatable, you
Mm.
know.
Okay,
Um,
so let's talk about the relatable thing.
yeah.
Probably might not have been asked this question before, but I like to ask questions that are kind of outside of the box. What does David Williamson post NDE, the heart attack NDE? What conversation do you have with David Williamson pre NDE to get him to have an understanding of where you're at now,
Mm,
based on the context of knowing who David
yeah.
Williamson pre
Yeah.
NDE is? Like, how would you get across to him with all of his anger and everything? Like, what kind of conversation would you have with him?
I probably wouldn't have been able to reach him.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah. And that's what led to me dying. Is that I've been told I was a genius since I was a child. I've been told that my mind was good since I was a child. So I didn't assume that as polarized and centric as my thoughts were, people didn't tell me I was wrong. People didn't tell me that, oh, that's a bad way to think. People constantly reinforced that I was brilliant, that I was a genius. So I never really questioned a lot of the thoughts that I had and a lot of the feelings that I had. I just kind of thought I was right. And so even like I've read comments from young black men who say, he's sold out. This is some Stockholm syndrome, stuff. How can you be
Yeah, and
one with?
let's be clear because some people may not understand like where you were at in terms of it was more like of a political worldview, right? Um
Yeah.
and I mean it could be encapsulated into like a quick term, fuck crackers, right? And was that really what your whole life centered around? That ideology?
Well, a lot of it, and also ideas, but not necessarily having resources to implement ideas, but ideas about how we could function here that didn't center our trauma or our hatred for them.
We as black folk.
Black people, yeah, yeah. And I had a whole lot of ideas for communities, a whole idea. I wanted to create a healing center called Para Ankh, you know,
Hmm.
like House of Life. And in college, these are things I thought about. Like I wanted an idea. Another idea I had was we had a lot of churches in our communities. Why not turn, if we have five churches on a block, one of them can be a dental ministry. One of them could be a after school daycare study room ministry. One
Hmm.
of them could be a clinic where you just go and get basic healthcare needs and stuff. And these could still be ministries. You can still be the reverend that's over this church is still doing God's work, and he can still share God's word if that's what he feels compelled to do. But we have enough real estate where we talk and
Hmm.
we trigger, and we invoke each other with
Right.
emotions, and we have enough space for that.
Hmm.
We need space for the basic needs of the human beings in the community.
Hmm.
Kids are suffering education, we're suffering health, we're suffering,
Yeah, but
uh,
these are still noble. Those are noble aspirations that you had, right? You still there? Might have frozen up a little bit. Um, these these thoughts that you had about, hey, I want to do some things for my community because of what my community has been through. We've been through a lot as a people, so I want to do this. And so you could say that it is focused a bit on the people that you consider to be adversaries. I think we broke up a little bit, but
yeah,
I was covering the space a little bit. What I was saying was that those are still like what you wanted to do for our people was still noble aspirations, right?
yeah,
You wanted to do noble things. So yeah, you were angry, but you wanted justice and you wanted
yeah.
some noble aspirations to help our people. But you lack the agency. But what I want to know is that with this near-death experience that you had, the second one, did it make you feel like there's no need for noble aspirations in
Not
regards
a,
to our people, or
not at all. And this is what people don't understand is that the only thing I'm saying now is that if you feel deeply compelled to focus your attention on a thing, then really be about that thing. Do something. Do something. Don't just sit somewhere feeling and talking shit from the sidelines forever because it will make you sick.
agency? Agency.
Agency. Agency is where it's at. When you turn this white man into this super magical wizard sitting in a castle somewhere, snapping his fingers and creating chaos for you, how can you solve problems like that?
Right. It provokes a learned helplessness,
Yes.
right? Because
Yeah.
this magical adversary can do everything and there's no space for you to actually win.
Yeah. Yeah.
So maybe so okay, so in your mind now, the vitriol has gone, but you still want to do things for people who have a less fortunate circumstance, but you're more focused on love for the people as opposed
Yeah.
to hatred
Yeah.
for the adversary.
And also when you complete tasks, no matter how small they are, your body generates good chemicals.
Hmm.
So there are certain behaviors and certain dispositions that you're not able to maintain for long periods of time while you're doing things and
Hmm.
achieving things and feeling good about things and getting pats on the back and getting love from people that you're helping. It's hard to feel hopeless when you see actual feedback from people from things that you're doing, you know? So our habits have to reflect what it is that we want out of this life. If you want to see beauty in this life, go out and do some beautiful shit.
Hmm.
Don't sit around talking shit all day. That ain't nothing beautiful about standing on the sidelines, throwing rocks and hurling a bunch of damn negative words about anybody. Who cares if you ain't doing nothing to fix the situation that made you that mad? You
Right.
know,
So
and that's my orientation now. It's
right. So
just
your orientation is now as being a creator more than a critic.
exactly. And also, if there's work to do and we know we got to do it, regardless of where it came from, do the damn work cheerfully. It got to get done. Do the
Mm.
work cheerfully. It's your responsibility. It's not a burden. It's your responsibility to do this work. Do it cheerfully. And some of the dispositions that I see from activistic types is like they're so focused on the messaging and galvanizing emotions, but not galvanizing
Yeah, the internet froze up a little bit right there. Um,
And all the money that we put on political campaigns, if we were collective as a nation, if that money went into a pot that says this is the fixed problem pot, we would probably be able to, in one election cycle, we would probably be able to fix community problems all around this country for 5 years straight. But we're sitting and participating in a system that we see already is everybody's cynical about it. The Republicans are cynical about the politics in America. Democrats are cynical about politics in America. And we still put our money and attention on it when
mhm,
we have real problems that are in front of us that we know because we live them. So
right.
why would I put some money, send some money into some vacuum out in some ambiguous space when
Mhm.
I know what the problem is and I know what needs to be done to fix it? We have given up agency. All of us have, you know.
So it seems to me that, a solution would be for everyone to at least have a near-death experience. And if you can't, but if you can't have one, the second best thing would be to have some type of psychedelic.
Psychedelic.
And people have brought that up. I mean, there's people who
Yeah.
study psychedelics, you know, people like Terrence McKenna. And I've had epiphanies in life, man. I was very much like you. Once I found out what happened to our people, I was very bitter, very
Yeah.
angry.
Yeah.
But one of the things that actually transitioned my life from the anger to actually seeing the possibilities that there can be some human solidarity is only really one thing. And I think maybe Malcolm X might have had that experience as well, when he went to Mecca and started seeing all
Yeah.
types of people together.
Mhm.
Um, it was an epiphany for him because he's never been in that type of environment. Something similar happened to me, but it happened around cannabis. And what happened was that I was in California when I was in law school. So I've always been, since I was 18, after I read the autobiography of Malcolm X, I've always been focused, and I still am, on solving the problems for our people, people of African descent. But I was also very, very angry and very vitriolic and really couldn't stand to be around Caucasians, to the point where when I was in college and we would have, like you have your dining halls, and I went to a predominantly white university, Tufts University, shout out to Tufts University. I literally would get an ulcer because I'm learning
Yeah.
all this history, man. I'm learning all this torture that we went through, this transatlantic slave trade, and uh women being raped and babies being ripped out of, these ripped out of pregnant
Yeah.
parents and fed to alligators, and men getting their genitals chopped off, just for looking at a white woman or being accused of looking at a white woman, and learning about the rape and pillage of Africa. And all this is coming at you as a young man, and there's nothing it can do but invoke anger and a
That's it.
righteous indignation and a need for justice. And it's coming from a noble place, because who wouldn't want justice for their people who've been tortured, family members who, this is a
Yeah.
natural human emotion, right? The question is, how do you turn that into something productive and not letting it eat you alive, right? Well,
Yes.
and also, how do you learn discernment? Because what we find out is that it's not all people who we identify as our people are good people,
Yes.
right? And it's
And
not,
not all people that are white are
yeah,
horrible.
are
No, it's
actually, yeah,
yeah.
because you'll find some who can be very helpful in some of the things that you're doing, right?
Yeah.
Um, and they're also born into a circumstance, right?
Yes.
So what I noticed was that when I was in law school, I was in California, man. It was my first time in California. And my law school allowed us to do internships. So every 3 months we do classes, and then the next 3 months we go and do an internship with a law firm. So I love that. So I went to California. Of course, I went to the places that were warm, because I was in Boston, right? That's where I
Mhm.
went to law school. Shout out to Northeastern University School of Law. They have like the number one co-op program. It's called co-ops, where you basically work half the time that you're in law school. So you learn practical experience. So I went to
It's good
California,
stuff.
man. And so when I
Yeah.
went to California, I stayed at the UCLA campus. And um, I had a dorm room there to myself, UCLA campus, amongst other UCLA students. So I'm in law school, but I'm working for this law firm in Santa Monica. And there's this cool cat. Shout out to John Shafai if you're still there, man. He was the guy who was the lawyer who hired me as a intern. And so I live at UCLA campus in Westwood, man. And so I'm there, and it's winter time in Boston, but it's like basically damn near summertime in California because the weather's just so nice, right? And I'm playing ball in the winter time, and I'm just feeling good, man. And so, like, and really, John Shafai, the lawyer, is only asking me to really like kind of give reports to him on research I'm doing, legal research, like maybe once a week, man. So all my days are free, bro. And
Wow. Yeah.
there, and of course, I'm playing my reggae music, and I'm like really just enjoying being in California, right? Until one day I get a knock on my room, my door, and it's this Asian cat. He says, "Man, I hear the reggae music you're playing because I'm deep into roots reggae music, you know."
Yeah.
He said,
Yes.
"Man, I hear what you're playing, man. Can I hang out with you? I love the music. Can I hang out with you?"
Yeah.
Like, hell yeah, you can hang out with me. You know this, right? Well,
Yeah.
well, this guy like starts like rolling spliffs and just like sharing spliff with me. So of course reggae come with the spliffs, you know what I'm saying? So
Yeah.
yeah, me and this Asian kid are chilling, dealing with the ganja, dealing with just righteous reggae music and just having a good time, man. And then like that was like the first day. The second day he knocks on my door. It's like, yo, let's hang out. And he's like, I'd like to introduce you to some of my friends, you know what I'm saying? Like, can you play some of your music for them? I'm like, yeah. So I bring I bring some music that I have with me, man. And so we're chilling out. And these guys are like it's like the United Nations, man. You know what I'm saying? It's like
Yeah.
all different types of races of people were there, and we're all smoking up. And I'm feeling like first time I'm around like these white kids, but I don't feel defensive. I don't
Yeah.
feel like we're at war. Everything is peaceful and everything is love, man. And it turns out, so then we leave, right? And I'm like, damn, I had a good ass time, and I never thought I'd have, a good time around like all these different types, Asians and white folks and brothers and sisters and just
Yeah.
different people, man. And I'm learning about different people's stories, man. So I'm learning about the Armenian genocide, and I'm
Yeah.
learning about because people just talking, but there ain't no like accusatory. It's just people talking about their life experience, being immigrants in America, and
Yeah.
just talking. You know how it is when you get that gun.
Yeah.
People just start
Yeah.
talking philosophy, but nobody's trying to prove they're right about anything. It's just everyone just sharing their life experiences. And reggae is the backdrop. We're playing Bob Marley. We're playing Burning Spear. We're playing. It's just lovely, man. It turns out that this Japanese kid, he's Japanese, right? It turns out that he's the main ganja plug for the whole University of UCLA campus. You understand what I'm saying? So he's like
Yeah.
leaving me like ounces at a time because I don't even have to pay for it, right? And so my whole time there is this huge ganja experience, but also this like thrust into this world of these people that I'm actually enjoying their company, and nobody's feeling taken advantage of. Nobody's feeling like someone's trying to like call them like some type of epithets.
Yeah.
Saying because I grew up, part of where I grew up in when I moved from Chicago, my parents moved to the suburbs. It was me and a couple other, maybe two, two or three. It was only me and two other people that were black families in the whole neighborhood.
Yeah.
And the first day I went to go play, because I was a really good football player when I was a kid. And so when we played football, I grew up playing football in Chicago in the inner city, and we used to play tackle on the cement.
Yeah.
You
Y'all.
understand what I'm saying?
That's a
Like
different,
it was
different.
different. We were
Yeah.
different. Like, but I was like maybe 6 or 7 years old. So it's not like big or anything like that. But when I went, when we moved to the suburbs, man, I remember going to because when you go into school, you know that the kids are playing football because you hear one kid's name being called. Johnny, Johnny, Johnny. And what it is the other kids are running and they're asking Johnny to throw him the
Throwing
ball.
the ball.
Johnny's the quarterback. So I'm like, I know that sound. I know that, and I'm good at football. So I run. I go running, And I'm like, yo, can I play? And they look at me. It's all these white kids, and they say, and how old was I? This is fourth grade, man. So I'm 9 years old in this new neighborhood at this new school. And I'm like, they're playing my favorite sport. Let me join the other kids. Like, we're just kids.
Mm-hmm.
All these white kids look at me and they're like, no, nigger. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
like, what? And this is the adjustment that I had to make. And knowing that I'm in this world with this history that I know nothing about, that thrust me into a
Yeah.
reality where I'm like the other. You know what I'm saying? So I grow up knowing all of this, and the same thing as you, like harboring, like, yo, like there's something. And then Malcolm X becomes your father figure.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
Marcus Garvey, because now you've got a solution, but there's no real agency to make these things happen. So basically, you live a life of frustration because you can't
That's
really
it.
accomplish the things that you want to accomplish because there's no infrastructure in place for you to do it. So you got to kind of build things from scratch and not understanding how money works because everything requires
Yes.
money. And so it becomes a frustrating existence. But man, what I what I came out of in that experience was not to become a hippie where it's like we are the world, we are the people. But I did have in the back of my mind, David, man, yo, there could be a chance for world peace,
I think so.
but everybody got
Yeah.
to smoke some ganja.
Yeah.
Everybody
Oh,
got to smoke some. If we
yeah.
even go, if we're going to actually make this happen. So my thing was like, listen, world leaders and all these people, I require them to actually have some type of cannabis experience or some type of psychedelic experience to bring them to a place of humanity, man.
You know what you're saying, bro? What was the difference between a pharaoh outside of bloodline?
Mm-hmm.
What is the difference between a pharaoh in the Egyptian mind and a regular person? It's exactly what you're saying. They've been through a process that allowed their nervous system to be flattened. You
Mm-hmm.
can't lead other human beings when you're triggered all the time because you will make decisions that affect a lot of people based upon your emotional state and not a flat nervous system and access to executive functioning. Pharaohs were considered god kings because their brains were different than everybody else's. Ptolemies, when Alexander came into Egypt, were considered non-Egyptian born pharaohs. That's what Ptolemy means. They were pharaohs. They were flat nervous system leaders. 320 something years they ruled Egypt. There was contention on one side that said they're trying to turn Egypt into Greece, but the other one was like, shut up. We're able to practice our religion, how we want to practice, how we've been practicing. They're not stopping us. Because prior to that, the Persians and the Saints were toppling temples and persecuting the Egyptians for practicing their tradition. The Egyptians and the Greeks were contemporaries, practicing very similar things. And the Egyptian historian, the Greek historians make that very clear that we learn these things here. A lot of who we call Greek historians were born and raised in Egypt. They're called Greek historians because they were there under the Ptolemaic period. So they call them Greeks, but they weren't.
Right.
They were Egyptians. So the current racial politics sometimes gets imposed on ancient Egypt and ancient Greece, but the ancient Egyptians and ancient Greeks didn't hate each other. There's no recorded war between ancient Greece and Egypt. Even Alexander's quote unquote conquering of Egypt only occurred after Egypt had been conquered several times over. The pharaonic line had already been severed, and they were being persecuted for practicing Egyptian religion. He came when that started happening, and the first thing he did was install Ptolemies and allowed them to go right back to practicing their religion. Does that sound like a conqueror or a liberator?
Mm-hmm.
You understand? So we've taken racial politics and imposed it on ancient Greece and called Plato and Aristotle and Herodotus plagiarizers instead of contemporaries of ancient Egypt. They were practicing the same stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So of course they had access to the teachings. They weren't plagiarizing. They were spreading. They were
Mm-hmm.
spreading the truth. They were spreading the correct orientation towards these stories. You know,
Let's go. I want to go back. Yeah, that's an interesting perspective. I want to go back to something you said because I don't want it to be lost. You talked about baseline experiences, and I kind of had an epiphany when you said that. Basically, you're saying that you have people who have PTSD making decisions.
Exactly.
Then you have people who have basically had baseline experiences to get rid of their PTSD. And then when they make decisions, it's better for the collective, right?
Yes.
And
Yes.
and so basically, I had PTSD, you had PTSD, right? You had an NDE that got you to baseline. I had these cannabis experiences that got me to baseline. So it's about getting people to baseline.
Baseline.
Like that's what's coming out of this conversation.
Yes.
Like that's where all human beings need to do. And the question is, what is the pathway to baseline? You got unfortunately fortunate,
Yeah.
right? Right, that
Yeah.
you had this baseline. I mean,
Yeah.
I guess I had that baseline experience with cannabis and being around folks, and but at the same time, I want people to be clear. It's not being gullible, and it's not that
Yeah.
all of a sudden that we think that the whole world is love and peace and all of that,
Yeah.
but it's a greater understanding of where we could be, uh, just as people, and we're not. It's not like a pie in the sky type thing, but it's at the same time not making decisions based on overly emotional feelings of hatred or overly emotional feelings of revenge,
Yeah.
right? It's about making decisions that's good for as many people as possible, so that we don't have to revisit this cycle of war and the cycle of. So, I mean, it's basically an integration of Martin Luther King and Malcolm X into one body,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
using the wisdom of both.
Hmm.
Not, because I think there's a lot of, particularly in the Black conscious community, there's a real kind of maligning of Martin Luther King.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I would just tell people, man, roll up a spliff and listen to Martin Luther King uh lectures sometimes, his speeches, man. He was very profound.
Yeah.
And he
Yeah.
wasn't a weak man at all. And I understand that you're going to need an army. When people come and drop bombs on your village, it ain't gonna be like peace and love when that
Yeah.
happens. Like you're not
Yeah.
gonna do that. But like if you look at the conflict with Israel and the Palestinians, and this is goes directly to kind of the profound moment that we just had with what you said about baseline experiences. It's very clear that the people making decisions in Israel, the Netanyahus,
Wow.
uh, are
Yeah.
are literally making decisions based on PTSD,
Yeah.
right? These are
Yeah.
people who are they are in psychotic rage.
Yeah.
And in that psychotic rage, you cannot think straight, and there is no measured responses. There is no.
Never again.
Yeah,
Their motto was never again and
yeah.
never
They're in a
again.
psychosis.
Yeah.
They're in a psychosis that will happen to human beings once you think that the world is against you. And
Yeah.
if there's evidence to actually to prove that where you believe that, well, now it's me or nothing,
Yeah.
or survival or nothing. And so everything is throughout that lens. And so when I watch the Israeli situation with the Palestinians and how the Palestinians may respond and going to kill, a whole bunch of them indiscriminately, these are just human responses to trauma.
Yeah. That's it.
Both sides are traumatized and both
That's
sides
it.
are psychotic. And the
Yep.
only way that they're going to get out of it is, man, put all these people in a room and put them on some mushrooms or some cannabis or
Yeah.
something to get them to a baseline experience, right?
Yes.
Where I
Yeah.
can sit next to you now, because this needs to be probably discussed. And we probably we can do part two,
Yeah.
because I think it's a very valid and a very necessary conversation.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Because an important thing that you're bringing up is that after I died, right, I went back through a lot of my life, and, and thought about like jobs that I didn't get because some racist white man didn't give it to me, right? So I think about what was I thinking when I went into that job interview. As soon as I saw it was a white man, I hate these motherfuckers. I hate them. 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 I
you
hate
know
them.
that all the possibilities for your prospering is going to be closed in your mind. You are
Exactly.
in failure,
I've
in a lack
already,
of agency.
yep. So I do all of the performing for the interview, and I'm like, okay, I crushed this interview. And okay, I should get this job. And I don't get the job, but I ignore the fact that I came in there with this, I hate him, I hate him, I hate him, I hate him, I hate him energy. But I'm willing to judge him for hating me, and that's why he didn't give me the job. The disposition that I took when I came in the expectation that I had in my mind when I came in influenced the outcome just as much as my blackness, you know. And I think that that level of energetic accountability, what are the thoughts that I'm having in these situations? If I want a certain outcome, are my thoughts consistent with the outcome that I want? If they're not, then I'm just as responsible for the outcome not becoming what I want as any other variable I can imagine in my mind. You know, was I even in a receptive state for what it is that I want? No, I was hating him. I was focused on hating him while I was looking for an opportunity. So no
Right.
longer I have agency. I know that my thoughts help create my experience. So I can put my attention where it needs to be and 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 try to influence this reality in ways that increase the likelihood of the things that I would like to see happening. And and now after the second NDE, the timeline that I see, and it's a literal city completed, and it feels like it's in the Levant area, you know. Um, and it's a city, man, that has to, it would require cooperation from definitely the Levant inhabitants, the Israeli, the Palestinians, and all other governments in the region. But it would require the participation of all governments to be able to create this thing the way that I imagine it, you know, because it will require resources probably from all over the world. So it will require participation from all over the world, you know. But in my mind, I see this completed. So if it requires a global cooperative effort to see the city, to have the city completed, and I see it completed, then every bump in the road that I experience on this planet along that path is just a bump in the road. I already see the end result. We're going to figure this out. We're going to get it. And and that could be the same type of foolishness that I had before, you know, in my fixed orientation towards hopelessness. I'm cool with having a fixed orientation towards a timeline that where I see and am able to feel hope from, you know, and that's where and I can keep my attention where I want it. Like there's no TV show that anybody can make that can take my attention off of what it is that I see for humanity. You know, there's nothing here that's that compelling that I'm gonna abandon my guard of my attention as it relates to what it is that I want out of this experience. You know, I can enjoy anything here, but I still know what I want from this experience, you know, and that's where my attention pretty much remains fixed at. So it is it's hard to get me out of that state, and it's a very peaceful, beautiful state because the things that I see are beautiful, you know,
Mm.
and I'm not going to get triggered by things that I understand. I've hated things. I felt passionate about things. I've had opinions of things, and none of that mattered to those things. Those things still persist.
Hmm.
So if I could look at these things with sobriety, with a sober mind, and with a flat nervous system, I might be able to participate in correcting some of those things. You
Mm.
know.
How
So
are how are people reacting to this new David? The
yeah,
people who are closest to you,
most
like
people is positive.
your
Yeah,
brother, like the women in your life. Like,
yeah.
how are they reacting? Like, wait, this isn't the same dude. Like, are like how are they navigating you?
Some people don't see any change and they treat me the same as before, but I don't argue with people. So if somebody's going to argue with me, they're going to do it by themselves. And I think that over time, they'll see that they're going to have to learn a different behavior to interact with me. Because I don't have opinions of people that are extreme enough for me to feel like I have to confront them and say something, you know, combative to them. I can just speak about what I see, and my nervous system is flat. And I'm not being accusatory. I'm just saying I understand that I've probably been worse.
Mhm.
And here's how we can move towards something else. You know, with my mother, I think we are making progress. But we do have, you know, I think that, you know, my mother's life story is Oprah Winfrey's times 10. You know, like she's had a lot of trauma, and I'm learning what what trauma does to a person, whether it's a parent or a brother or a stranger. It's just trauma does things to our nervous systems, our perception, and shapes our perspective. And I'm trying to be more compassionate for that, but I'm also I think I have a level of concern that she's getting up in age, and I want her to really understand some of the things that I experienced. And so there are some times where it may not seem as though I'm being patient with her, but I think there's just my humans moments of just being like, I don't want you to leave here without understanding that that trauma that didn't happen to your soul. That only happened to a body, mind, ego. And when you leave here, you're not. That's going to stay here. So
Mhm.
you can start working on imagining yourself without having trauma. Like imagining what would you do if you hadn't made a XYZ decision based upon this experience or based upon this pain or perspective? Like what would you have done? You know?
I think what you've shown though is that the question I asked you is how could what would the new David say to the old David, and would you have been able to convince him? You said no. So I think what you understood in that answer was that you're talking about neural pathways, right? When you have
Yeah.
neural pathways that are developed through all the trauma that has happened, those are stuck neural pathways until you can have a baseline experience.
Yes.
You can't be talked out of a neural pathway.
Yeah.
You either have to basically work it. Otherwise, what am I
Habits.
saying to the people?
It
Yeah.
gotta be habits that
What am
move
I?
you out.
Yes. So to the people listening who might not understand what I'm saying, this would be an easy way to think about it. Imagine that you're right-handed and you want to all of a sudden be left-handed, right? Well, there's a lot of work you're going to have to do to change that neural pathway of always depending on your right hand as your
Yeah.
dominant hand. So someone throws a ball at you, you're going to try to catch it with your right hand as a reflex. The moment that you use your left hand first as a reflex is when you actually have been successful in changing that neural pathway. And that does not happen overnight. That takes a lot of work. But then there's another way that that can happen. This is what we're talking about. This is the what I would call the express way,
Yeah. Like
right?
a
Which is
factory reset.
yes,
Yeah.
yes, a factory reset. And this is this baseline experience that you're talking about.
Yeah.
This is what happened with you. And until they have it, all they could do is slowly try to forge new neural pathways, which
Yeah.
most people cannot do. Most people are not going to be right-handed and become left-handed within their lifetime, right? It's just not
Yeah.
going to happen. Now, it can happen if you lose your right hand. Now you're
Yeah.
forced to do it, right?
Yeah.
Then you'll learn how to write with your left hand and throw with your left hand and do things with your left hand because you have no choice to do it. And that experience, the day after day of doing it, will forge a new neural pathway. But seems to me, the other way is this experience that is a baseline experience, whether it be through a near-death experience. Maybe some people can do it through like deep meditation.
Yeah.
You can do
Yeah.
it through, cannabis. Some people could do it through mushrooms. Some people do it through ayahuasca, DMT, and what have you. But it's striking.
Sometimes it just spontaneously happens. You know what I'm saying? Like with no explanation. Like the lady that I mentioned earlier, who was just waiting on her friends while she was getting ready to go out, and she changed, you know, and she was somewhere else for a while, and when she came back, she's not the same person,
Right. So she
and
had a
she's aware
baseline
of it.
experience, though.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah. So I
yeah,
think that there's an importance in these baseline experiences because they are the fast track to making these types of changes and discarding the traumatic experiences, where now you can actually think from a more holistic point of view instead of a defensive point of view,
yes,
which ends up really taking away the quality of your life, right?
yeah. And the beautiful part about it is that you still had those experiences. So you don't have to I could be empathetic to a person because I've been there. You know,
Right.
I've been attached to ideas. I've had extreme opinions about things. And now I just see the violence in it. That's it. Every time I hear somebody express a very extreme opinion, all I think is the war that's going to happen 10 years down, 20 years down the line, 100 years down the line from just that opinion. If that opinion spreads, that's violent, because you got to have a more open orientation with others. You can have closed orientations with projects, fixing a building. You
Mhm.
don't have to have an open orientation if you have a tried and true way of making a building. But when it comes to another human being, you have to have an open orientation. You don't know who you're dealing with. We vary, but I don't know. And I think that's for what I learned is that the town I grew up in had 4,000 people. How many white people did I experience?
Right.
A few hundred. But
Right.
my perspective it became a sweeping implications on billions of white people. And that's not how decisions in science or any other sensible way is made. You don't get to take an infinitesimally small sample and be able to distill all kinds of generalizations from that you that have
Right.
any integrity, you know?
Right. And
Yeah.
even if you did have a good sample size at some point though, we still have to make it work because we share a planet together and there has to be some type of I mean I to me
That's it.
to me, one way, which is the way that has been done in the past that never really works, is basically trying to wipe people out, right?
Yeah,
But it never stops, right? It never
exactly.
stops. And then it becomes a point of diminishing returns when everyone got nuclear weapons,
Yeah,
right? When everyone
yeah.
has that technology to wipe out everyone on in the world, we might have to find out a different way to get along.
We just sit down and talk.
Yeah, we're gonna have to find a different way to get
Yeah,
along. And I mean, and to be fair, it's harder to ask those who don't have that power to have that position than the people who already have that power. Because most people who have that power don't want to give up their weapon. They don't want to give up their advantage.
yeah,
So I have the advantage. Why am I going to give up the advantage? So,
yeah,
I would have to
yeah,
negotiate with you, right? But it seems to me that, like what you said, there's not one group of people in the history of the human race who've stayed in power forever. You
hmm,
know, it's fluctuated. And the thing is that once you get to a point where everyone has nuclear weapons, uh, with the press of a button, one personality can get rid of the whole world. We're going to have to find another way to really relate to each other. And more we're having these conversations. I'm sure you have them much more than I do. I mean, I've given a lot of thought to it. I've looked at DMT, I've looked at entheogenic plants, plants
yeah,
that, that cause inspiration. Uh, it seems to me that we're going to, as a matter of the human survival on this planet, uh, we're going to have to find different ways in which we resolve conflict,
yes,
whether you have quote unquote terminal power or not, because at some point all of us are going to have terminal power.
yeah,
And even if Africa and the Pan-Africanists have their nuclear weapons, do we really want to use it and destroy the rest of the world? Right? Because it
yeah,
have effects on us too. This earth is for all of us. And these conversations need to be had where people authentically can actually speak. But it seems like the only hope we have is these baseline experiences. And I believe these baseline experiences exist for just that reason.
yeah,
Keep us away from exterminating ourselves.
yeah.
Right? Because
You know,
yeah,
yeah.
go ahead.
I think that we're presented with these throughout different milestones in our own personal development, like puberty, like the childhood, like babies go through so many different milestones, but then you get puberty and then you get, young adulthood where you're going out on your own. Like these different milestones that we have to where our personality needs to shift or a shifting would be beneficial for us because our um, expression in the world is changing. And then you get to our age, 50s and close to 50, 40, I'm 47, but and andropause and menopause
Mm,
and you can either pathologize it and lose your mind and start behaving in a crazy way, or you could sit with this change and figure out what it is and what message comes with it. And I
mhm,
think if you don't sit with the change and understand and accept it for what it is, then it becomes something that you're taking medication to kind of to fight. And now there's this, I don't know. Like, as a lot of men, you hear these jokes about men turning 50, 60 years old, buying a convertible and trying to chase young girls, you
right.
know, and it's like, no, there's a better way to handle that shift. And it's a very natural shift that all men go through, but there's a more graceful way to handle it than to go buy a convertible and chase young girls, and the same thing with a lot of women go through menopause. They shift. A lot of the divorces that we're seeing now, especially, are happening in 40s and 50s because people are not even being aware of the fact that they're shifting and they're changing and they're just running with feelings instead of grounding and understanding these shifts in our body and the implications of them.
And having baseline experiences.
Yeah, yeah,
So, I mean, so it seems to me that, I mean, you have this access to this baseline experience that you've had. I'm sure you would love other people to have, and maybe the fate of humanity will depend on that. It seems like this conversation is driving us to the point. Because I mean, here's the reality: is those people who don't really understand what they're saying. Ask yourself, who would you think that you could get along with better, Willie Nelson or Colin Powell? Like,
Yeah,
you understand what
yeah,
I'm saying? I'd rather hang out with Willie Nelson.
same.
You understand what I'm saying? So, like, I mean, that's
Yeah,
the reality of the situation is because Willie
yeah,
Nelson has had these baseline experiences that makes him this person, at least seemingly. I mean, I don't know him personally, but I've heard him talk. Whatever. I'd rather hang out with him than Colin Powell.
yeah,
You know, Colin
yeah,
Powell's a fellow black man. You get what
yeah,
I'm saying? I mean, he
yeah,
passed away and
yeah.
all that. So I'm just talking. It's just I'm giving an archetype.
No, I understand and I get
And it's
it.
clear
Yeah.
Colin Powell probably never had many baseline experiences, if any at all, right?
Hmm.
Whereas Willie Nelson has them regularly, right? So it seems to me that you have a certain calling, man. And so, I mean, I've seen you do different interviews on NDEs, and the interviews have talked about the NDE, but I haven't seen interviews where you get into this type of
Yeah,
conversations we're talking about. My
yeah,
question to you is like, now that you've had this gift, a real gift of an NDE that has transformed you into being a more at peace human being, a more functional person, a person who's enjoying their life more, a person who is not interested in vitriol, a person who's interested in agency. It would seem to me that you'd want to spread the good news.
yeah,
What like are there communities that you're part of people who have NDEs who want to just tell people, look, there's life after death and it's a
yeah,
beautiful thing. Um, I mean, do you have some type of vision as to how your message can get out? Are you mentoring people? Are you starting like, because people do this life coaching thing, right?
yeah,
But some of it could be missing if you don't understand the value of a baseline experience or what baseline experiences bring to the table,
yeah.
right? I mean, so what are you doing in terms of your vision of, you know, adding some value to the world through your experience that you had?
Yeah, it seems like whether I want to do this stuff or not is happening because I was cynical about coaching for a while and then people started asking me to coach them. So I've had people reach out for just to talk for an hour or 30 minutes or whatever and they are all willing to pay for it. And I was almost like imposter syndrome. Like pay me for what? Like but for whatever reason, a lot of the times I have information for them that is that is good for them and it helps them and they feel hope. They get inspired by it or get hope from it, and they say this to me. And I don't know that people reached out from Paris, from Spain, from Nairobi, Netherlands, Thailand. I mean, from everywhere. And they all seem to thank me for just this what I'm saying to them. I don't know what I'm going to say to them prior to them getting on the phone. I don't profess to know everything or have some. I don't know. I do know that that the void experience that I had is something that doesn't seem to leave me, and it does give me it feels like some kind of connection to information. And everything seemed to be there. So the one way that I've described it is that if I was there and everything is there, then I already know you. And if I come across you and you speak to me from in front of me, then I can also access that space again, remember that space and remember you from there and hear what you would tell yourself. It has nothing to do with me. Is what would you say to you? And because I have access to that space that you exist in as well, I listen to you tell you what you need to hear. And I don't know what I'm going to say. I don't know the people that are calling, but oftentimes there is information, and sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's just me being able to relate to their story and share how I was able to shift, some of my perspectives or some of my orientations towards things that had happened to me, and it seems to just help, you know. But I'm moving in that direction. I've offered it. I have excuse me, a scheduler, a calendar, and all that stuff set up to where people can set appointments, And so I'm open to it. I was very reluctant. This year I've used it several times, and I've had people. I've shared it several times, and every time I've shared it, someone have hopped on the calendar. So I'm going to continue to share it, and I am open to teaching. What I do work a 9 to 5. I'm slowly trying to transition out of that to where I can write and read and learn and ask questions and just spend the rest of my life in service to humanity. That's because that is ultimately what I do desire, Eru, is to be of service. I think um I'm really cynical about how we function here, and so playing the rat race game difficult for me. Is so like it's a lot of bandwidth that I use to just play this game. And so I would like to be able to get that bandwidth back so that I can do things that I feel like can help. And one is actually just writing down some stuff. I have a lot of book ideas, and I just need to get this bandwidth back so that I can just sit and handle these and just write without constantly worrying about bills and the rat race game. So
Right. And I mean, of
yeah,
course, I think that you would serve humanity a lot better by having
yeah,
that type of a platform as opposed to the 9 to 5 thing, man. So,
yeah,
one of the things about the podcast that I do is that there's people who listen from all over the world. And I think that there are going to be people who hear this, who sat through this and got to really understand what you're talking about and seeing the value of sharing your experience and what it can do for them. So I'm very fortunate that, we know each other, that I can at least put this out there, man, because I think that you have a lot of value to bring because I didn't know all of this of your story when I met you. And then, you would kind of let me know that you did have this near death experience. And we talked about it briefly. I saw you make posts online. But what is very clear to me, to the people listening, man, is that this is just a good human being, man. This is a good brother who I've known, for some time and is always, I've always had, when you meet people in life, man, you don't need to talk to them every day. You
yeah,
talk to them once every 10 years, but you just know
yeah,
they're just a good person. And David just falls in that category for me. I don't see David every day. I don't see him every month. I don't see him every year. I don't even see him necessarily every decade. But
yeah,
he's just one of the people that I know is just a brother that is a well-meaning brother who has a lot to offer. So I would love for, people to avail themselves of whatever expertise David can give you in terms of understanding your life, your trauma, baseline experiences, how you can get to the other side to actually have a functional life devoid of bitterness, devoid of these thoughts and these traumas that make you ultimately sick and
yeah,
ill. And some of us are not fortunate enough to die and come back. But I think that David definitely has a purpose more than a 9 to 5, and he has a purpose to really serve humanity. And I think a lot of the things that he was going through was just somebody who wanted to serve humanity who didn't know how to do it, and had a sense of justice and still has a sense of justice, but now has a better way of going about these things, so that you can have a life in which you are healthy emotionally, spiritually, and all those different ways that are necessary for us to enjoy this time on earth because it's all about perspective. There's a lot of ugly things on earth, there's a lot of beautiful things.
beautiful. Yeah, yeah,
And sometimes
yeah,
we do an injustice to the beautiful things by focusing on the ugly things so
yeah,
much that we just forget the beautiful trees around us, the sunshine, the
yeah,
uh, it is no one's right to be able to steal that beauty of the earth away from us,
mhm,
right? No matter how much trauma you want to put another person through, there is still sunshine in the morning. And it's up to you to be able to recognize the beauty of that sunshine and the beauty of the
yeah,
trees and the beauty of the beach and the beauty of whatever that is around you, the beauty of family, the beauty of
yeah,
children, the beauty of possibilities. And so it's about recalibrating our minds to be able to see what's really in front of us, you know?
yeah,
Think that that's what these baseline experiences are, and that's why I stay with my ganja. That's why people
yeah,
would stay with their mushrooms because it always
yeah,
brings me back to my baseline of what the possibilities of just being Irie is
Yeah,
still
man.
knowing that we have a responsibility to make the world a just and a better place because we
Yeah,
don't want to be imbalanced and feel like everything is hunky dory now. But at the same time, we don't want to be disrespectful of the beauty that actually exists around us.
yeah,
And that's what these baseline experiences do because everyone who's had these baseline experiences, from near death experiences to ayahuasca to cannabis to what have you, everyone comes out with the same thing is that there are these intense feelings of love, man.
that's it, man.
Yeah,
Yeah, I don't even the idea of theys and others. There, I ain't no more theys and others. As soon as there's a they and a other, I already think violence. It's violence. It's
right,
violence because I know what theys and others lead to. Whether it's 100 years, 1,000 years, 1,000,000 years, if there's a they and a other, there's gonna be violence. You
right,
know. Yeah.
right. And so for human beings, the only time that there won't be a day and other amongst human beings is if space aliens land, and now
Yeah.
all of a sudden we're united against them, right?
Exactly.
But but
Exactly.
but a baseline experience would let you know that the aliens are part of us too,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
You
Yeah.
get what I'm saying?
Yes.
So
Yeah.
yeah, man,
Mhm.
that's the type of energy, man. And it feels good. It's a good energy to come to that understanding because even if you feel like the they are us thing, you still don't feel comfortable, man.
Yeah.
Like if you feel like you solved that, there's a they and us issue, you still don't feel comfortable. You don't feel
Yeah.
happy. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You don't feel at
Yeah.
peace, man. And so
Mhm.
having this understanding, again, still knowing that there has to be justice on earth, we still have to protect ourselves from those who
Yeah.
see us as they and other, because
Yes.
not everyone has our world, that worldview or that baseline experience. But I do think that it makes me feel good to know that there is hope, that if
Yeah.
these people actually have a baseline experience, they'll chill out.
Yeah.
You know, that's
Yeah.
it's so real
Yeah.
because I mean they've studied mushrooms for these soldiers who come back from war with
Yeah.
PTSD, and these
Hmm.
mushrooms, these psilocybin mushrooms are completely reversing
Yeah.
PTSD, where now they're cool
Yeah.
because they've been traumatized. You know what I'm saying?
Hmm.
So there has to be a way to deal with trauma, man, and I think that you're really onto something big, bro. I think you're onto something huge, maybe huger than you really realize, man. Because and I've said that to you because
Yeah.
what I remember about you the most was your talk about spiritual systems. Not necessarily spirituality, because anyone can have interpretations, but
Yeah.
you were very your conversation with me whenever I've been around was about spiritual systems, and you were never dogmatic or even saying that I'm part of a spiritual system. You would just talk about them and talk about the specificities in them and what they mean and all that. And I think that you've been inadvertently trained to be
Mhm.
able to deal with certain solutions through your life's history and then your trajectory, man. So I don't think that any of these things happen by accident. The interest that you took in life, the visions that
Mhm.
you had, I don't think any of it is accident. I think that you're at a stage in your life now where I think all those experiences are going to come into something very powerful and beautiful for
Yeah.
your life story, man, and what you can contribute to people
Yeah.
worldwide, man. So to me, it's like an honor, man. It's like I'm
Yeah.
emotionally moved talking to you, man, because I've had some epiphanies while we're talking, you
Mhm.
know, and I've had some
Yeah.
understandings of things about my life and the value of baseline experiences that like
Yeah.
innately I was drawing towards, but really understanding it's a necessity for
Yeah.
the human experience and for human beings to be better people,
Yes.
because we're
Yeah.
all traumatized in some way or some sort, and there's no real tools to handle it.
Yeah. Yeah. And we don't understand the brain. Like we should. I was joking with friends. I was like, how we have these tests for school exit tests. If you don't understand anatomy and physiology and how the brain and your nervous system works, that's the to me the prerequisite. Like, if everybody in any society knew how the brain works, they would understand how trauma works. So they would understand when a person in front of them, what state that they were in, so that they would know that should I engage? And if I engage, I understand that this person is in their limbic brain. They're in their lower brain. There's not a lot of reason that's going to come from this. I have to choose wisely how I engage. Like if we understood the brain in that way, we would be able to reason through how we interact with each other. We would be able to sympathize and empathize with people when we see them because we would know looking at them what state they're in and decide with more wisdom, with more discernment, how to engage, you know. So for me, like that part too, like the baseline experience is already indicates that you understand the nervous system. So if we are having a conversation about getting people's nervous systems flat, I think that implicit in that is that we all have to learn how the brain works. We all need to learn that our amygdala is going to tell us some comforting stories that basically lead us away from reality. And once we get to insular function, we're more concerned about the collective, you know, and we need to understand these things.
Mhm. And is this the work that you see yourself doing moving
Yeah.
forward?
Well, definitely trying to understand better, asking experts questions about these things. I don't know. I mean, I'm almost 50. I don't know if I'm going to ever go back to school for to be a neuroscientist, anything like that.
Yeah, I don't think you
I,
have to. I don't
but
think you
what I
have
will
to.
do is I can get neuroscientists on and I have questions that I can ask them. Me and my other buddy that had the near death experience, Zachariah, we have a lot of questions that come from being able to pull information from other, places, and instead of asserting ourselves as experts or gurus, we can just ask experts these
Mhm.
questions and let them tell the world what's going on, without us having to center ourselves.
And
But things are moving in a good direction in both of our opinions. So
yeah, that's good, man. I would love
yeah,
to see. I would love to see you do a podcast.
we're working on it. We're
That would be
working on
great.
it. Yeah. So we should be probably ready to start putting out episodes in the next couple weeks or so, next few weeks. Yeah.
Excellent, man. I look
Yeah.
forward to it, bro. I want to, as we wrap up, man, I just want to thank you for you being
Yeah.
you, man, and just making yourself available and always, maintaining who you are and being authentic and being ready to abandon certain worldviews whenever you see that there's something better, because that's the sign of real
Yeah.
honesty and intelligence, whether someone agrees with you or not. That's not really what is most important. What's important is that you're being authentic to your experiences, right?
Yeah.
You're not
Yeah.
just discarding an experience that is showing you a different way just for the sake of fitting in and
Yeah.
maintaining certain postures that you've had.
Yeah.
And I think that's the sign of maturity.
Yeah. Or even like for me, I was so serious, and I sometimes I feel like I stuck in that way because I had to be. It was almost like I can't betray David's personality, so I can't. There's a range of behavior that I'm not allowed to have because that would be betraying David's personality. But who
Right,
chose David's personality? I chose that. So
right.
yeah, I don't
And
get
then
into
after a
that mess.
while, it becomes like a shtick,
Exactly.
right?
Exactly.
Like it becomes like this act or this thing that you have to
Yeah.
convey to the world, right?
Yeah. I'm over that.
Character that you have to be,
Yeah.
right? Yeah.
Yeah. If I
Yeah,
need to access that seriousness, I can access it, but it ain't gonna become me anymore. I'm just
right.
lighthearted now, much more
Yeah.
lighthearted. Yeah.
Yeah, man. Well, I think that's what a heart attack can do to you, right? No pun
Yeah,
intended, right?
exactly.
Make you lighthearted. Yeah, man. So yeah, David, man.
Yeah,
You know, we certainly can circle back and do a part two, man. But
yeah,
because there's a lot that I know we can talk about and chop it up about, man. But we just kind of wanted to lay the foundation for people. That's what happened with you and what positive came out of it, man. I think it can be a roadmap for a lot of people. Not that you have to have a heart attack before you actually, have an epiphany,
yeah,
but it's a metaphor to understand that you're not going to get change until you actually make some drastic rearrangements of your mind
yeah,
towards action, man. And sometimes it can happen inadvertently through a heart attack. It can happen, in other ways. But it seems to me that having a baseline experience where everything is at a baseline, where you can just clear all of the baggage away and you can just see things from this net zero perspective. And when you're around other people who've been exposed to that type of baseline experience, then the understanding is even greater. So I know that you're making a huge
yeah,
contribution to the NDE community and other people as well. I think what I'd like to talk with you on part two, maybe in a couple months, is the synergy that can exist or does exist between the NDE community, the psychedelic community, cannabis community, the entheogenic plant community.
Yeah,
It would be an interesting conversation, man. And maybe we could even have a panel conversation and have
yeah,
someone like you who had NDE, somebody who's had baseline experience through cannabis, someone who has baseline experience through uh psilocybin, some through
yeah,
MT, and let's just talk about what it all means and how it's affected our lives because I think we're all dealing with the same thing. We just got there through different routes.
yeah. I think so as well. Yeah. I mean, our nervous systems are the same, and we trauma is trauma. It doesn't really matter what happens to you, but it affects your nervous system the same way it affects another person's nervous system. So, if we understand that and we understand trauma differently and how it affects our nervous system differently, and we can even pull from ancient texts because a lot of the practices that are given in ancient texts, like the meditations, the acupressure, the all of those things were designed to reduce your nervous system response to your human experience, you know. So it was they were trying to integrate flattening nervous system into the culture. You know, always all of these traditions did that, whether it's
Yeah.
through prayer, meditation, or something. All
Yeah,
traditions.
or even stoicism.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. So
Yeah. Yeah, I think there's a lot to be discussed, man. People
yeah.
want to reach you. How can they reach you?
Right now, I'm working on the website slowly. But Facebook is probably the best. Is the just facebook.com/DVD731.
Okay.
Email address DVD731 at proton.me.
Hmm.
Um,
I'll put your
in
contact information in the
okay, yeah, I can see,
info.
and I can shoot. I have a link to where they if they do want coaching or anything like that, they can sign up through the calendar on there, the scheduler on there. So I'll
Great.
send that link as well. So
Great, man.
yeah,
My brother David Williamson, man. Thank you for the
thank
conversation,
you.
man. I got a lot out of it. I feel great.
Yeah,
Talking
man.
to you, man. I feel, a greater sense of calm, peace, and love inside of me just from this conversation, man. It triggered a lot of really good feelings, man. And just keep doing what you're doing, my brother. And look forward to talking to you again, man.
Indeed. Look forward to it as well, bro. And thanks for having me, man. Love you, brother.
Yeah,
And
man. Love
let's
you too.
let's definitely talk. Let's talk soon, man.
All
Yeah.
right. All
All
right.
right.
Bless.